All right, this lesson I'm going to be talking about what to paint first. Now, if you've never done a new construction job before and this is unfamiliar to you, I'll talk about a basic new construction package like this package right here. You can run into all different types of scenarios, but we'll go over a basic package and then hit a few scenarios. And the basic package, what to paint first, we PVA prime walls if the builder is requiring walls to be primed. And even if they're not requiring it to be primed, you really should be priming your walls. You see all these walls are pure white. They're not finished, they're actually primed, and that's what typically a garage, like this garage, will be painted with just PVA primer, and probably most garages are just left with the primer because it's a nice clean white flat finish. So you're gonna walk in here, and typically the drywallers finish, they do everything, they do their texture, sand, clean everything, and then before the carpenters come in, this is your opportunity to prime walls fast and easy, where all you got to do is mask glass. You don't have to worry about woodwork, anything. There's no closet packs in, no window sills, there's no doors installed. I just walk through here, literally shoot this thing like super fast. So the priming is super easy, super quick. Now, carpenters come in. The carpenters begin, they install your door jambs, they install baseboards where carpet's gonna be. I had some people ask me just the other day on some of my videos, there's no baseboards in some of the room, there's no baseboards, there is baseboards in some rooms. Wherever they install carpet, they always install baseboards first because the carpet tucks underneath the baseboard. Wherever there's like tile, LVP, stuff like that, baseboards are installed afterwards because you want the baseboard to sit on top of that flooring because it looks nicer instead of trying to get cuts butted up against your baseboards, which does not look good. So where there's baseboards and stuff, that's where the carpet is gonna be. So once everything's installed, we come in, we begin prepping all the trim work, and we begin painting trim work. And typically the first thing when it comes to trim work, like all the doors are installed, we take all the doors off, we paint all the doors, we move them out to the garage, get them out of the way, get them in a protected space where they're not gonna get overspray, dust. You want a big, nice, clean, open environment to be painting your trim at. After our trim is painted and dried, we're gonna mask all that off. You're gonna see how we mask trim off fast and easy with 9x400 plastic, and paper. We'll mask our trim off, and then we'll spray our walls and ceilings all one color. New construction is very typical. Walls and ceilings one color because it's fast, it's easy, it's less expensive. The painter's gonna charge you more if there's different colors everywhere, if the ceiling's different than the walls, etc. It increases the price of the house. The builders are trying to typically keep it down. When they're doing spec builds, they may have customer involved that's saying, well, I want colors everywhere, so that will change things. But most new construction homes we do, walls and ceilings one color. This one, times are changing. It used to be ceilings were white, walls were all one color. And that was like a trend that is kind of like moving away to going back to all one color. We'll be doing a room upstairs, a pink room. I asked the customer, is the ceiling gonna be pink? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, that's interesting. So that's what it would look like, stereotypical new construction, PVA prime walls, trim installed, paint doors, get doors out of the way, paint trim, mask trim off, and then paint your walls and ceilings one color. Now, if you were painting ceilings a different color than walls, that might be one scenario you'll run into. What we typically do is we spray all of our walls, get overspray up onto the ceilings, and then we mask the walls and drop plastic all the way down to the bottom, because you can mask, drop plastic. We'll spray our ceilings, pull our plastic, and then our ceilings are a different color than the walls. That's the next, kind of most common scenario. Some people might say, why not do the ceilings last, or do the ceilings first? If you do the ceilings first and then you're masking to spray the walls, you have to mask upside down, pull your plastic way out. It's way more difficult to do the opposite scenario. So that's kind of what we paint first. There's might be other scenarios, an accent wall going someplace where you have to mask off and roll an accent wall, but stereotypical new construction, that's what it looks like, what to paint first. All right, so today we're in this new construction house. We're beginning the process now. The drywallers are all finished, came through, did the texturing, did the sanding, touch-ups. They even vacuumed and mopped the walls, which a lot of drywallers do not. This builder that we're working for, he does, so I'm very thankful. We came in, got a pretty dang clean slate. They had paper down on the floors, pulled all the paper so you don't have drywall mud everywhere. I've seen it just where drywall mud's all over the floors. You gotta scrape the floors, everything. So we're beginning the process. I rubbed my hand over the wall and there wasn't very much like a dust, you know, the sanding dust on the wall from the mud itself. And it appeared like they did mop it, but we're just going over it. It doesn't take very long. It's a 2-story house, 2,600 square feet, I believe, somewhere in that range. The mopping will happen in probably 45 minutes to an hour at the most. So Noah's, you know, he's already gone through this room, mopped it. Now I'm gonna go back behind him and begin the vacuuming process. So we're mopping the walls, knocking down any loose drywall dust, because if you don't, that's gonna cause an adhesion problem with the paint sticking to that dust. Of course, you can't get every bit of dust off, but that's what the PVA primer is. It helps that dust, it helps seal the rock, it helps seal, you know, so you get a nice, good, even top coat finish. But it is important to vacuum. If you don't vacuum, you're gonna start kicking up dust on your freshly painted walls. You're gonna get dust coming off window sills and everywhere, so you vacuum. So we begin mopping, and then I'll just start vacuuming what's up top and work my day down to the bottom. So high window sills, I like to just vacuum the whole window, try to vacuum out the track, the window itself, get anything off. Even though it's gonna be mass, I just like a clean surface. So we'll vacuum that. I like just using like one of these type of ends right here that kind of brushes it off also. Windows, window sills. Then we'll get down to the floor, start vacuuming the floor. You don't want anything kicking up from the floor, especially around all the corners. Technically, I guess you can, you know, you only really need to vacuum a few feet out. You know, it doesn't take much longer. I like to just vacuum the whole entire floor. So you'll see us doing that. This is the fitting I use. I want it to go tightly down to the subfloor right there, so it vacuums and gets everything out. Also, the vents don't have covers on them. The one vent right down here had a lot of drywall mud down in there, sanding mud down there. I just take this tip, stick it down there, vacuum out of that. Because you just never know if anything's gonna be kicking up, if the air turns on. Typically while you're painting, you're gonna have the air off. Even while you're mopping, everything shouldn't have any air on, but you wanna just vacuum that down there, because the worst thing is to get your trim painted or your walls painted and the air comes on and it just kicks up, you know, a bunch of dust onto wet paint. Vacuum, I'll be vacuum out light switches outlets. We'll be vacuuming those out too. Just hit it with either one of these nozzles. Once we get this all cleaned up, we're going to begin the prepping of the windows and caulking the windows process, getting it ready to spray. So it's very important to get it all clean, ready to go before you do any painting. All right, I'm upstairs. We're getting ready to prep the upper portion of this house. I'm gonna show you what mopping the walls looks like up here. So we're gonna be mopping, vacuuming, covering outlets, getting the windows ready to be prepped and caulked. So the mopping itself, if you've never seen a mop, or if you don't understand what mopping is, this is a mop. It's just a simple mop that you would mop a floor with, and all you're doing is just knocking down the dust off the wall that was created by sanding. You're just knocking the bulk of it down to the ground, and then you're gonna be vacuuming that up. It's a very simple process. You're not scrubbing the wall, you're just kind of lightly going over it with your mop to knock everything down. We don't mop the ceilings, we just mop the walls themselves. And I'm just gonna go up and down. You can kind of see it just knocking down some dust off the walls. And this is what mopping your walls is, just like this. Just gonna go around, mop the whole entire thing, and then we'll begin the vacuuming process. You don't want to vacuum and then mop, obviously, because then you're just putting a lot of dust and dirt down onto the floor after you've already vacuumed it. But that's what mopping the walls is with a mop in new construction. All right, up here, we're gonna give you a look at masking a window. So this is what quite a few of the windows look like, in this new construction house. There's nothing right here but a 2x6 and cut drywall, because there's gonna be a wood window sill put on there. So we've got drywall, 3-sided. I'm gonna be masking. I always take and put 1 inch on my hand masker because it releases a lot easier when you're pulling it off versus 1.5 inches. I got my tough gaff with me because this is what I tack the sides with and mask the sides and bottom with using frog tape blue. This is their blue painter's tape right here, 14-day release, because the tape's gonna stay on here sometimes multiple days. And so you don't wanna use a production tape on here if you're gonna be leaving the tape on there, especially if it's gonna be on there for more than 3 days. Frog tape orange, their pro grade production tape, that's got a 3-day release. If it's gonna be on there for more than a day, I typically am gonna be going with blue as my tape to mask windows off. So this is how it's done, M3000 hand masker. Just going to get it up here, pull it out, get it about a 1/2 inch from the window right there. I'm just going to tack it up. I'm trying to leave some of my caulking exposed. Caulking should always be painted. Otherwise, it's gonna collect dust and dirt over time. When I get close to the end, I'm kind of gonna estimate where I need to tear it and then tear it off, put my masker either in my back pocket or on my ladder. Gonna run finger across it to get it to hold, stick, get a good seal. Gonna pull the sides down. While I'm on my ladder, I'm going to take and tack my sides. I'm gonna bring it down tight, tack one side. I'm gonna bring it down tight on the other side, get off my ladder. Now I'm gonna tack this side. I'm gonna try to take a sharp point of my tape right here, stick it up in the corner, make a nice corner, come down the sides, press it down. If I don't have a straight edge, tear another piece off right here, get a nice corner, just like that. The window's long enough, you gotta move your ladder. I'm gonna move it, get my sharp corner up and to the corner, bring it back down to where I tacked it. If it runs up onto the drywall, I just pull it away, tear another sharp corner, stick it up in there, make sure I have a nice corner, brush my sides down, make sure I got a good seal on the edge and the plastic. I'm gonna pull my plastic all the way down like this. Now I'm gonna begin masking down the side. If I need to get it, pull it over so I get a good seal. I'm gonna go all the way down the window, a little bit extra onto the wood, all the way down. If you don't get a good clean line, just take your masking, pull a little bit more, straighten that line up. Make sure you got a good seal. So you can see right here, I don't have a good seal. If it's not sealed, you got any holes, I'm just gonna go back and just put an extra piece on there and seal that. The last thing you want to do is get overspray on your windows. I'm going to roll this up to where I get my clean wood exposed, because when I'm spraying this, I don't want this flipping up and overspray getting on my windows. I'm going to tack this down all the way across here. Make sure my corners are all tight. Run my masking down. Just got a splinter. That's why I wear gloves, except when I mask. So there we go. We've got my window pulled tight. Make sure nothing, no leaks. If there was a hole or something from your masker right there, the blade, put a little hole right there. That could cause a leak. All this is sealed good. There we go. We got nice sharp corners. Our window is all masked. So when masking, there's a couple options. You could tear your tape, to get sharp corners, or just take a longer piece of tape, run it over, where you're going to be masking, so it extends beyond like that, and then I'll just trim it with my knife. So I just overrun it just like this. Then I'm going to get my 2-edge knife out, and I'm going to trim that corner real quick to be straight, just like that. Take my knife, make sure you got a nice sharp blade starting the day so you can cut your tape just like that. So these are full wrap windows here. They don't have a window sill on them. Sometimes they're full wrap drywall, not full wrap trim. So I've got to mask off the whole vinyl window. So I tore my masking a little bit too far. I'm going to flip it, fold it, tack it like that. It's okay if you pull it too far. Kind of in a difficult situation with a stairwell here. Hard to work with, angle my ladder and everything, so. So you have a couple options. You could actually, trim all this excess off, or just roll it up. If you trim it, then you kind of got plastic floating, all over the place. So I like to just roll it up. All right, in this video, I'm going to be talking about back rolling, and I know that might be a question or topic that would come up when I'm doing the priming and stuff. So, we'll talk a little bit about just back rolling in general. So, back rolling enhances penetration and enhances adhesion on a porous surface. So a surface like glass, glass is non-porous, it's very slick and stuff. And so if you were to say a smooth metal door, a piece of glass, you spray some paint on there, back rolling it is not going to, help you out when it comes to pushing the product into a porous surface or enhancing the penetration or adhesion. But if you're doing like rough sawn wood, T111 siding, anything that's porous, drywall, back rolling could be beneficial to enhance, penetration and adhesion. So now the subject is, when I'm doing, an interior new construction, house, do I need to back roll the walls? So down here, this scenario, we've got a texture on here. This is Sun Valley texture. It's what we call Sun Valley here in Idaho, Treasure Valley. Some people call it skip trowel. Some people might call it something else. And where you can see white is the topping or mud skimmed over the drywall and right over the drywall paper and where it was taped, which the paper is the gray. So you have kind of like these smooth voids. So predominantly this wall is a really smooth wall. When they're eventually painted, they're super smooth. You run your hands down there, you can just lightly see these voids, but it's kind of like a level 5 finish with just some voids in it. It's a really cool looking texture. So the question is, should I back roll this, to enhance the penetration of the primer when you spray it on there? Now the primer I'm actually using is a PVA primer, which is a polyvinyl acetate primer. It's designed to be sprayed right over drywall topping and mud and over drywall. And it's kind of a thin primer product that's intended to just absorb right in, soak and seal the rock and the drywall and the topping or the mud and seal it so you get an even finish, as a top coat. It's not designed to back roll. So what would happen if you back rolled this wall, because your thought process, hey, I need to, enhance penetration or, make touch-ups for the homeowner or for me as this, house gets, progresses, flooring gets installed, cabinets gets installed, people nicking and dinging the walls. If I was to take and spray this and back roll it, the primer is not designed to be back rolled, and so it's going to what we call stipple really bad. So it's going to take a smooth finish and now add stippling to it. And that in itself is going to probably for, in our area, a lot, the homeowners, the builders, they're not going to like it because they're expecting a smooth Sun Valley texture or skip trowel finish. And back rolling the primer isn't beneficial to you at all either, because you're going to be top coating over that primer. When you're spraying your top coat, you're going to be atomizing the paint, which actually changes the sheen and changes the color, slightly through the atomization and the crushing of the paint going through the airless tip. And so that in itself means that you're still going to have touch-up problems. So if you were actually going to back roll anything, you would spray your PVA primer on, which is designed to be sprayed and not back rolled. Then you would spray and back roll your top coat on there that's going over the top of your primer. And that way, if you were to get a nick in the middle of this wall right here and you touched it up with a brush, it's not a sprayed on finish. And so it's more likely going to match and not leave, a spot on the wall that has a different color or a different sheen doing the touch up. So there's, a time and a place for everything. I would say also, you would only want to be back rolling if you're using a paint that is designed to back roll. Now, most contractor grade paints that we're using in new construction aren't really designed to back roll. They're less expensive. They don't have flow and leveling agents in them. So when you back roll them over the top of your primer, it doesn't flow and level and smooth out. So it's going to stipple it. So if you stipple your primer and then you spray on a top coat on top of that and you back roll that, now you've even added more stippling and more texture to your wall, which is not desirable. So if I had any option, if I wanted to back roll because I wanted to make touch-ups easier for me, touch-ups easier for the customer going down the road, and I wanted to back roll, I would spray my PVA primer on, and then I would spray a paint that was designed to back roll, and that's going to be a more expensive, higher end paint. And I know there's a paint, Benjamin Moore Aura, is a paint that actually has flow and leveling agents in it. Cashmere, I've actually got experience with both of those products, and Cashmere was actually designed for like level 5 finishes, smooth wall finishes, and that will flow out and level out, pretty nicely. If you back roll this wall, if you spray Cashmere on there and you back roll it, it's still going to stipple it to a certain extent. So if the customer is expecting this wall to be, completely smooth, you're going to have to explain that that expectation to them that it's not going to be smooth. You have to explain that to the builder too. So if the builder is not if he sees Sun Valley texture all over the place, and you're a new painter come in and you spray and back roll it, and it's not what he's accustomed to, coming from his other painters, you may end up running into a problem. So I think there's a time and a place for everything. I would say predominantly, most new construction painters do not back roll anything. And I would say really the reason why is it takes more time, and eventually it costs you more money because it's more labor intensive. Somebody's spraying, somebody's right behind them back rolling. And so you're adding another person that's the same amount of time, and labor as it is the person to spray. Then it's also extremely critical when you're actually back rolling. So I got a PVA primer on there that's still just a primer. I'm spraying the paint on the wall. If I spray, halfway around the room and then somebody starts back rolling it, your paint's gonna start drying, very, very quickly and coagulating very quickly, and you're gonna start back rolling it. It's gonna stipple it even worse. So the back roller has to be like right behind you. If you're not, priming at all, and which is very common in the new construction industry, is a painter just coming in and spraying this, one and done, blow and go is what they say. Now you're gonna be spraying the paint on, loading it on pretty heavy. It's gonna be absorbing really fast into the drywall and the mud, and it's gonna be drying quickly, and that's gonna cause, coagulation, drying, stippling, all kinds of issues with having, not a smooth texture. And I'll just kind of give you an example, like how do I know all this? Well, a lot of the stuff I teach is from experience. So I never back rolled, anything in new construction. I ran into a job site, brand new builder, new home, $2 million home, and I, brought it up to the builder. Do you want this Sun Valley texture back rolled? Explained, what it is, and the benefits to it, the drawbacks to it, everything. And he said, absolutely, I want you to back roll it. I'll pay you the extra to back roll it. We sprayed, back rolled the whole entire thing. Customer came in, was extremely upset, pissed off, basically. And because their expectations, which wasn't communicated, from the builder that there would be stippling on the walls, and from back rolling it, and they were extremely unhappy. And what happened? I was kicked off the job. So once again, sometimes I just like to give real world examples, and so you don't run into the same thing I did down the road. So it's a little bit about back rolling. You're gonna have to decide for yourself. I'm not back rolling this situation. I didn't back roll the PVA. I'm not going to be back rolling the top coat either, but I'm gonna be spraying a pretty high-end top coat on there that's gonna lend myself to being successful doing touch-ups, even if I get a nick or ding in the middle of the wall. All right, so we're out here getting ready to do our priming, and we're doing the prepping, mopping the walls, vacuuming, caulking windows, and masking off. I'm going to talk a little bit about the primer we're going to be using. It's a PVA primer, if you've never heard the term, polyvinyl acetate, and that's a primer specifically for drywall, bare drywall, or drywall mud. It's not a primer for anything else but drywall. If you don't use a PVA primer, some of the challenges you're going to run into is your paint sticking to the walls. You've got, the sanding and stuff, even after mopping. You've got drywall dust on your walls that'll cause adhesion problems if you just try to put a paint over the top of that and you don't prime it with a proper primer. You don't want to use other primers, say above like a PVA primer like Zinsser 123 cover stain, multi-surface primer, stuff like that, because it's just expensive primers and it's not designed to do what this stuff actually does. A PVA primer goes on and it seals your sheetrock, and what that does is it makes it so your top coat that eventually goes over the top of that will be even across your entire wall and you don't get flashing. You can see we got exposed drywall paper right here where the mud is not covered those areas. This texture right here is called a Sun Valley texture. Here in my area, some people might call it a skip trowel. Some people might call it something else. If you're not familiar with the term, here in Idaho, Treasure Valley, it's called Sun Valley texture with a hand texture on the ceilings. Once again, it's extremely important to seal this with the proper PVA primer. PVA, once again, polyvinyl acetate. It's gonna seal this bare drywall paper. It's gonna seal the mud. It's gonna seal everything. So your top coat, when you spray it on, it's gonna look professional, it's gonna look nice, and it's gonna look even. So you wanna use a PVA primer irregardless of what other types of textures you do have on there. You could run into orange peel textures. You could run into your level 5 finishes. There's a lot of different textures out there, but use the proper primer so your finish looks like a quality finish and like a professional did it. All right, I've just about got everything set up. I'm gonna start spraying upstairs now. I'm going to talk about ceilings. Well, we typically work from top to bottom in new construction. When you're spraying, walls and ceilings, and especially ceilings, you want to be able to walk, from end to end of the room, and you don't want to have any obstructions because you don't want to have to start and stop in the middle of the room. Upstairs, everything's moved outstairs. Like downstairs, there's a lot of stuff out in the way. But eventually, when we move downstairs, we're going to move these things all out of the way. I'm going to start moving myself upstairs, taking my hose upstairs. A couple little tips. What I like to do is take full 5-gallon buckets that we're using or not using. I'm gonna set them at my corners, so when my hose is going up the stairs, my hose is not hitting the corners and messing up my corner metal, especially when like the hose connection hits that, it could damage the corner. So set buckets around those corners, as you're moving around the house, and especially going upstairs, have somebody hopefully help feed you that hose going upstairs. So it's kind of the same thing with ceilings. I'm gonna walk end to end, and then I'm going on the walls. I'm gonna go from top to bottom of the walls, and I typically start from left to right. I'm right-handed. That's what works for me. And we'll go up there and you'll see what it looks like. I'm gonna be messing around with a couple tips. Typically, when I'm spraying walls, I like Titan HEA tips because they give a nice feathered edge. You don't get hard edges, which could actually become a problem when you're on your top coat and your final finish. You could get fingering and stuff. It could leave stripes and marks on your walls. Titan HA tips, work best, for that. So you typically try to work and use the biggest tip that you can so you can move as quick as you can. I'm gonna start out with just a 619 messing around. I'm gonna eventually grab my 1221, start spraying with a 1221. So I started doing the spraying now upstairs here, and I just wanted to show you, here's my assortment of extensions that I brought upstairs. Now most of the spraying I do, I've got multiple rooms. All these I'm gonna be using the same extension, but I've got a scenario right behind me, this little closet right here, tiny little closet, pretty difficult if not impossible to spray it with that 30 or 36 inch extension. I'd probably want something shorter, maybe this extension or that's probably a 12, that might be a 24. We also got a 6. You can just stack them too. Like I've been known to stack multiple extensions. If say I got a vaulted ceiling, can stack all kinds of extensions together, can stack these right on the top of this gun right here, And now you can see the reach that I would have, right there. So I'm definitely gonna, I'll take and spray like everything that I can spray with this long extension, then I'll just switch it out and I'll show you how quick, you can just change these things out. Now I just go in here, I think probably a 24, I could reach a ceiling with a 24, or not a 24, but a 12. That's probably either 12 or 10. Extensions, there's all kinds of a bazillion different sizes, but it just comes off like that, pretty quick and easy. Gonna attach it just like that. Then the end of the gun comes off. And then I just set them like this because I don't want paint coming out and getting down inside right there. I don't mind if it comes out that end. So I'm gonna set it aside, attach the end, and adjust everything the way I want it. And then I'll spray that closet and then switch it out again. So now I can get inside here. Now I can move, from side to side and spray everything, not a problem. Triad quick release extensions, absolutely love them for new construction, interior painting, exterior painting also. All right, today I'm going to be talking about one of these great tools for new construction that I've recently discovered. And I used to, hand sand back in the day. I've been around long enough doing new construction 25 years ago, something like that. Hand sanding, everything was miserable. You go home covered with Bondo dust, covered with spackle dust, primer dust, absolutely miserable. I've been doing new construction on this job now with the EcoSand 3x4 sander attached to the EcoSand or a Unitas vacuum, a HEPA vac right now. This thing has absolutely made the sanding process simple, easy, dust-free, and I can almost say fun. So no more like physically actively sanding. This thing is absolutely amazing. Been using 1/2-inch open cell sponges, been using a variety of even flat abrasives, Film Tech, have used a little bit of 10mm sponges on it, but the sanding process is super, super fast. You're probably 10 to 15 times faster sanding, with a mechanical device like this, and even a profile like this, the 3x4 profile. Nothing beats the 3x4 profile. For doing new construction, we've been using it on contoured edges, routed edges, rounded edges, flat surfaces, sanding spackle, sanding Bondo, sanding primer, sanding the closet packs with EcoStorm, 150 grit on the closet packs, sands them super fast and effortless. One of the great things about it is not going home just absolutely covered from dust head to toe. It's virtually almost dust-free when you hook to this vacuum. So I can't stress it enough. If you do new construction, the investment in the vacuum, it's going to be around $1,000. The sander is going to be around $600. $1,600 investment. As soon as you use it, you're going to say, say that 1600 is worth every penny of it. It's gonna pay for itself on the first job by the amount of time you're gonna save from using these dumb little things. But they do have a place. We have used them here and there. Another thing I like about Oonida's vacuum is the tool stand. So the tool stand attached to it, I've got all kinds of stuff on here, frog tape, I've got, Bondo spackling supplies on it, spackle knives, abrasives. So it's a cool little tool stand where you can always find things that you need, like a putty knife. So those tools are right where you need them, right where you can find them. So it is the Ecosan 3x4 sander, by Oonida right there. An industrial paddle-driven start-stop sander right here. Easy to hold, low vibration. Absolutely amazing, coupled with their vacuum. It's well worth the investment if you're doing new construction. If you're doing, I use it for cabinet refinishing. I use it for interior repainting of trim, furniture refinishing. One of the most versatile tools you'll ever buy. Kind of like one of the greatest inventions, the hand masker, or another amazing invention, the tough gaff. One of those tools every painter needs. So I'm gonna be talking about the abrasives I'm using when it comes to doing new construction, getting interior trim and closets ready. Now you're gonna see me switching out between abrasives, and I don't use a whole wide variety of abrasives, just a couple. I typically always have a 1/2 inch open cell sponge. This contours to your rounded edges, contoured edges, routed edges. So it's a 1/2 inch open cell sponge, and it's fine. I have 3 abrasives that I use, and they're on pad savers. I have them on pad savers because they're just easy to switch in and out without having to try to take it off the pad saver. So typically, like EcoStorm, that's what's yellow. EcoStorm cuts and sands a lot faster if you're trying to sand really, really quick. It's a paper abrasive, so the yellow EcoStorm's paper. The blue Film Tech is actually plastic, which will last a lot longer. It won't rip or tear. So I usually, have, I would say predominantly Film Tech, but EcoStorm, sands your closet packs like a lot faster. So I'm typically using a 320. So I have 2 Film Techs on 320. So I'll be switching out, between those. I'll use 320 on anything flat on my windowsills and stuff. EcoStorm a lot of times is in the closets. Film Tech 320, face of the MDF, wood, baseboards, etc. 320. I do have a 150, so I have a 150 grit, and I can tell it's 150 just by looking at it. It's quite a bit rougher. I'll switch that out if I got to do a lot of heavy sanding. Say if the door jambs have a lot of wood grain on them and I need to sand them really quick. Sometimes the closet packs will sand a lot faster if your closet packs are really, really rough. These are fairly smooth, but you can use a 150 to sand really quick. Sometimes if you're sanding, after the primer, 150 will cut through the primer a little bit too fast, so it gets pretty aggressive. The 320, to me works, really great. These are abrasives by Oonida. Oonida is the one where we get our Ecosan sanders from too. So they provide us with our abrasives and sanders. So 3x4 is the most versatile sander when it comes to doing this. So those are kind of a little bit about the abrasives. If you haven't seen, a pad saver, so anytime you're actually using a sander, the pad saver protects the hook and loop on there from getting damaged over time, but it also helps eliminate swirls. So that's a pad saver. So if you got guys that aren't paying attention, the paper rips, etc. They wear down through the paper. It starts messing up the hook and loop. It's a lot easier or a lot cheaper to replace a pad saver than it is the whole pad right here. So pad saver, I got multiple of them. They come, you can get them in packs of 3, I believe, or packs of 10. I like having lots of them. It's just easier to switch out with it on the pad saver to another one just like that and begin using it. Switch it out to my fine open cell. The open cell is really good for hitting the edges, to round these corners off on your shelves, wherever you got sharp shelves. It's nice for it finishes off your where your hinges go, etc. So it works really good. That's about the variety of abrasives that I use when I'm working here in new construction and the sander that I use. So this is the start of doing new construction. I've got a door. So we typically start with removing all of our doors and begin the spackling, sanding, Bondo, sand, caulk, prime, inspect with Bondo again, fill, sand, and then shoot 2 coats of trim. This is what it looks like. We begin taking off, the hinges and stuff. So these are hinges, we don't want to get anything on them. Here's my bucket of hinges right here. Got my hinges, so they're not going to get dirty. I'm going to eventually take those out where they won't get overspray, they won't get full of dust on them. We keep our screws separated. Here's all the screws from the doors we've been taking off right here. This is a typical door jamb. It's not been caulked, it's not been spackled. Now there's multiple ways you can do this when you get this door off. Now everybody kind of has their own systems and processes. Once we get this door off, there's going to be some schools of thought that says, hey, you should prime before you caulk and spackle. We don't do that. The caulking that we use bonds to bare wood, the spackling bonds to bare wood, so it's not an issue. We just kind of have what works for us, and we do the priming after spackle, after Bondo, and after caulking. So once again, if you're using inexpensive fillers, sealants and stuff like that, maybe priming could be something beneficial to do before. But if you do prime first and then put all this Bondo and everything on it, you're gonna have to prime again to go over that Bondo to be able to inspect for imperfections after that. So it's really like, I think, in the end, you're gonna be doing the same amount of processes probably. I just know, what's worked for us over the years, that's super fast and efficient. So we're gonna begin just removing, the doors. So again, keep hinge screws separate from any other type of screws. These are interior hollow core doors. They're super light. Try to be careful when removing screws, not to scratch your hinges. These are bronze hinges, and you can scratch them, if your drill slips and stuff. Don't just toss them in the bucket either, because you can scratch them. And I typically get to the point where I've got, 1 screw left in a door, and I'll take that screw off last, leave 1 screw up top, take the ones off down bottom. Door is going to tilt forward, just be careful. One method also is you can take off the door jamb sides and leave the hinges on the door, get the door off, and then begin removing all the hinges from the doors. That's kind of, once again, another one of those things, what works for you. Now, once I get this last door, I'm gonna get this last screw, hold on to the door so it doesn't fall and hit you. Get that screw off. Now I got the door. I'm just gonna lean it up right here. Last screw. So door is off. I've talked a little bit about labeling things. Definitely want to label this door. This is the up hinge. This is the up hinge. We're gonna label that. I haven't been removing all these doors downstairs. Noah's been removing them, so I'm not sure his labeling system. I'm gonna go look, see what he's got going on here. Labeling wise, he's got D for down. He's got 5 and he's got B. So that's door number 5, probably starting from the front entryway, working our way through here. B is probably for bedroom or bath. That's probably the last door. So I think I could be confident saying this is D for downstairs, probably 4, and then B would be with that. This is the matching hinge over here. I'm gonna write D for down, 4, B. Now, just to make sure, I'm gonna walk over here to this door and see if that corresponds. Well, we got D5, so that's downstairs 5. It's again, I'm not sure, but I probably wanna speak to the guy doing the labeling system and try to get it to match up correctly. This is the last door in the house, so I can even just say, what if just so happens that he had a D4, B somewhere else? Well, I'll just put an X. So now we just know the 2 X's will match up. So it's pretty simple. Just come up with some type of, system. This is the very last door jamb of the house. So I'll show you the spackling process. I'm gonna spackle this door jamb and kind of give you some tips spackling it. So now, I inspected the door jamb. There was a nail sticking out. You wanna be checking any other nails sticking out, not set. You wanna make sure you have your nails set. And then also, if the carpenters didn't do a very good job and there's a lot of volcanoes, definitely be able to scrape them off. These carpenters, throughout this house, there wasn't an issue at all with the nail heads causing volcanoes, so we haven't had to really scrape anything. But this is always with me, the Lin-Bite scraper, just in case that's an issue. Now I'm gonna begin patching everything, and the first thing we do is we patch with spackle. And I don't like to have a ton of spackle on my knife because it will dry out. Now, spackling, I usually kind of hit it a couple times. You want to leave kind of a little small mound on there. You want to have something to sand. I don't want to do what I call like scraping it completely tight like that, because it is going to dry and shrink a little bit. So we want just to leave a little bit of mound. Not a whole lot of pressure, but just a little bit of pressure. And I would say it's really good to have kind of a system and a process to doing this. If you kind of just like bounce all around, you're bound and determined to, miss something. So, the system could be just the face, left to right, then coming back the inside, right to left, and then the other face, left to right. Just kind of come up with some system, leave a little bit behind. Also, I like to have pretty wet spackle, like new spackle. If you're using spackle that's pretty dried out, it's really difficult to work with, and it just kind of makes it a little bit frustrating for you. So I always keep the lid on the spackle. Might have shown you that before, but if you just kind of set the lid aside, your spackle is going to start drying out on top, and then you're going to be working with dried spackle, which is kind of a pain in the neck. And I hate doing that. So, and if you leave, I would say too big of a mound of spackle on there, then you're just gonna have to do a lot of sanding. So there's kind of like a little fine line, from, what's too much, what's not enough. I'd say just not enough is actually just scraping it tight completely off like that. The spackle sands, fairly easily. It's Crawford's interior exterior spackle. You can see, and I'll give you a close-up look of what it looks like up close to how much spackle you need. So I'm kind of like not sticking with my system because I'm like kind of talking here, but kind of come up with a system, like I say, right to left, left to right. If you miss anything, you end up catching it after you prime, when you inspect, or when you Bondo. So don't worry if you miss something initially. So there's pins and all in the stop. There's little pins on there, little tiny pins. So we're filling all the pins. So I've worked up down that side. Now I'll work the other side. You don't have to do any cracks, you're just doing holes. All the cracks are going to be filled with caulking. There's a big hole there, so I kind of put a little bit bigger pile over that big hole. So I've worked my way around the door jamb. By having a system, by working up one side and down the other, you're going to be probably bending over less. So you're kind of like, we're trying to work smarter, and more efficiently. The whole idea is to get the job done quick and efficiently, so you're making money. And the spackle dries fairly fast, probably in 45 minutes. You'll be able to spackle, or you'll be able to sand, but a lot of that is dependent on temperature, humidity. One thing you don't want to do is start sanding your spackle or your Bondo too soon, because you'll ruin your abrasive. You'll get the spackle or the Bondo loaded up in the abrasive, and you can't get it out once it's what we call loaded, and so it's ruined. So door jambs spackled, I would move along to the next door jamb, begin spackling the next one. I'll end up sanding this, I'll Bondo it, and then sand it, and then we'll caulk it. But one thing I don't want to do is caulk now, and because we could end up ruining our caulking. If we caulk first, we could ruin our caulking. The caulking takes a lot longer to dry than the Bondo or spackle, so we caulk last. So baseboards, everything, I'm going to begin working around the house. So this is what it looks like. We'll give you a close-up look of how much spackle is enough and not too much. All right, so I'm gonna get ready to start spackling, or not spackling, but sanding the spackle. So spackle's dried, I'm gonna sand the spackle flat. I wanna get rid of all the spackle except where the holes are, and then we're going to Bondo over that. So this is kind of the next step of the process. This is what it looks like. I got the spackle sanded. You can see how fast it actually goes with a power sander. So I'll just kind of just let you know, like back my early days doing new construction for years and years and years, all the sanding we did was all by hand, and some painters still do it. We just have 2 sanding blocks and literally just sand all this stuff, the spackle, Bondo, everything by hand. And it's one of the reasons why I came to really hate new construction. Nowadays, we've got this tool that makes it probably about 10 times faster. So you don't have to invest in a tool like that, but it'll pay off on your first job that you actually use it on. So not having to breathe dust all the time. It's hooked to a HEPA vac also, so I don't have to sit there and breathe sanding dust all day long. We would actually hand sand with blocks, everything, and by the time you were done, at the end of the day, you were just covered with dust. Another thing, having a tool, I noticed when I was sanding, one of the nail heads is exposed a little bit. That will actually damage your abrasive, it'll tear it, so you definitely want to set those in. So I just set that nail in. Hopefully it didn't, it was barely showing, so it didn't tear my abrasive. So that one, there was that hole right there, and I actually, when I was sanding, noticed I missed the hole right there. So I'm gonna skim those tight, and then we're gonna begin doing the Bondo. Okay, now the Bondo's kind of like the same as the spackle. Put it on tight. I'm just gonna leave a little bit. The idea is to leave a little bit behind so you have something to sand and sand it flat, but you don't want a ton left behind, because then it means you just have to sand more. So there's kind of, once again, like a fine line to how much to put down and how much to remove. So it kind of looks just like this. If you see any nicks and dings, also dents, sometimes the finger joints right there, usually they sand out, but sometimes they don't. You can go over your finger joints. With my inspection light, I'll end up seeing those possibly, and I'll catch them on the first go round with the inspection light. Once again, this is probably getting a system, of, where you're going, so you don't miss anything, top to bottom, right to left. Don't have too much Bondo. Don't put too much on your, whatever you're using to hold the Bondo on. I'm using this plastic spreader. Don't put too much on there because it's just going to dry out really fast. So I've got the door jamb done. You're going to want to do your faces anywhere where there was a nail head that you sanded. in there. Bondo's a lot stronger than the spackle, a lot harder, a lot finer. So definitely takes a little more time. The spackle sanding goes really fast. Some guys don't Bondo their baseboards because they're down low. Painter's theory is you can't see it, so they don't Bondo it because it's not at eye level at a place where you can see it. I mean, it's not that much more work, so I typically Bondo my baseboards also. Now as I start to run out, usually wipe it clean, scrape it clean, start fresh. All the stuff on the floor is gonna dry out and vacuum up, so I'm not worried about it. Put a little bit more, don't need much more. The store jam's almost done. And then we'll wait for our Bondo to dry. We'll sand our Bondo, and then we will begin caulking. So now I've got the Bondo done on here. It's got plenty of time to dry. Once again, don't sand it too early or you're gonna clog up and you'll load your abrasive and ruin your abrasive. So it's got plenty of time to dry. Now we're just sanding it, and I wanna sand it, to the point where I can just see what, the Bondo's filled. If you leave too much, you're actually gonna see the edges and the ridges of the Bondo. So I'm using, once again, my 3x4 sander. It's hooked to the vacuum, so I'm not breathing Bondo dust. It's hooked to a HEPA vac and makes the sanding simple and fast and easy. So I'm caulking, this door jamb, and I'm gonna give you a little tip. When this is MDF, which, when you spray it with, your paint, especially a water-based product, it swells up, kind of gets rough like sandpaper. You could prime it, brush it, and it's kind of like a pain in the neck to deal with. That's the carpenters, that's just how they leave it. A good little method to deal with it is just put some caulking on the end of it. Smear that caulking. The caulking's gonna smooth it out. It's gonna seal it from your water-based paint and keeping that from swelling up. I just take my finger, smooth it out the best you can so it actually looks smooth like the rest of the trim. And now that's gonna be sealed and it's gonna look so much better. Like if you were to prime it and then paint it, sand it, and you can brush it again, it's not gonna look nearly as good as actually doing this caulking method. So just a simple little tip dealing with cut-ins of the MDF that the carpenters, haven't put a nice reveal on. So here's this door jamb. We've been showing you kind of like the process in it. Now we've got it shot with our primer, and we're gonna let that dry, and we'll do like our final inspection. The primer is gonna bring out a few little things. I can see some stuff that needs to be sanded, a few little pen holes. It looks pretty dang good, but just kind of little few touch-ups with Bondo, nothing big. So that's the next step, is inspecting all of our trim after we prime it. And then we'll sand that, once again, dust it all again, vacuum and dust it, and then we'll shoot 2 coats of our top coat on it. But it's coming right along. We're almost done priming all this trim, and we'll show you, what it looks like, spraying this door jamb and getting the finish coat on it. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about sponge caulking. I'm going to be sponge caulking, right here in this lesson, a door jamb. Now, everything, we caulk in here is use the same technique using these tools right here, the door jambs, window sills, closets, baseboards. It's all done, with this. The caulking sponge right here, basically what this is for is when you're wiping your caulking. Early on, I had this one employee, he started caulking, and he was doing the caulking, and he was just wiping it on his pants. It was insane. By the end of the day, his brand new pair of pants were completely covered in caulking. Now, that's the whole point of this sponge, is when I'm tooling my caulking, I got to get rid of the excess somewhere. I'm getting rid of it on the sponge, which can be cleaned out. After every single door jamb I do, or every closet pack I do, I clean out my sponge, I start fresh. But it also serves even another more important purpose, and that's lubricating your hands, keeping them wet while you're tooling your caulking. And wet fingers, wet hands makes it a lot easier to tool your caulking. So I'm using the sponge, I'm using a gun, I'm using a dripless gun. This is the brand Dripless. Dripless guns are supposed to not drip caulking when you're not using them. Sometimes that isn't necessarily true. If you're using cheaper caulking, or caulking that has air bubbles someplace in the caulking tube, it's going to leak and drip. This is a new construction site, so if it drips on the floor, it doesn't really matter. But I'm going to be caulking the door jamb, and I'm going to be applying the caulking. I don't want to put caulking on the whole entire door jamb and then go begin tooling it, because the caulking does begin drying pretty fast, and we call it coagulating. If you put caulking on too many different areas of this door jamb and then start tooling it, and you're way behind at starting to coagulate, you're not going to get a really, really smooth bead. So it's important in between, once again, in between every door jamb, in between every full wrap window or closet pack, I have clean, fresh water that I rinse out my caulking sponge with. Now, what I don't want to do, I want this caulking sponge to be super, super wet. I don't want it to be all completely 100% wrung out. That's if I was like really, really wringing it out. I want it wetter than that. I want some of that excess water, because that's what's going to be lubricating my hands. So kind of like a medium squeeze. And then I'm going to start off with fresh hands. What you don't want to start off with is what we call caulking boogers all over your hands. And what happens is, if you got caulking all over your hands, that's going to be causing you to not get a very smooth bead. Anything obstructing the soft pads of your fingers is going to make it so you can't get a really good bead. The next thing is, when you're getting ready to sponge caulk, cut your caulking tube get like a 45-degree angle on it. It's pretty important to have that angle cut correctly. I don't want to have like it flat. I like a 45-degree angle. That 45-degree angle is going to lay right up against your bead. You're going to start pumping the caulking in to completely fill the crack 100%. Don't go too fast or you're not going to really fill the crack 100%. But I'll show you what it looks like. We'll give you some tips, on the way. So I'm going to start and I'm going to do outside. I can do the outside first, outside the door jamb, or I can start with the inside of the door jamb, kind of have come up with a system that you kind of just like replicate every single time. If you do miss something, like something someplace on the door jamb, after we're all done with the spackle, Bondo, caulking, we prime it, and then we go back with a halogen light, and that's when we do our final prep, our final caulking, where we'll touch up anything missed or touch up anything that needs to be Bondoed. But I'll start, I can't see the back side of the door jamb right there, so I'll just start right here, begin applying a bead of caulking. So I'm gonna apply. It's not too hot in here. If it was really hot, I wouldn't be able to apply as much caulking. So I got a big gap down here, and I'm gonna slow down on this big gap, make sure I'm pumping it in, getting this gap completely full. Now, I'll begin tooling it. I'm gonna wet my finger. This is where it's extremely important. Wet your finger, very light push. Lay it out. I'll come up to the corner, come back down, lay it out. Every single time, wipe your finger, get rid of the excess caulking. I'm gonna come into the corner, press it in. Every time I swipe, I'm gonna wipe, get rid of the caulking, excess caulking. And what happens is I keep wiping, I'm keeping wetting my caulking, I can keep working it. It's not gonna dry as long as I keep wiping it. There, I think I got a pretty good bead. This part of the door jamb. I'm gonna get right here, come across. Make sure your caulking tip is clean. Your caulking tip will mess up your bead also. Lay your 45-degree angle down flat where you're putting the caulking. I could just come right back up because I ended there. I could come right back up if I wanted. I'd come into the corner, come back down, wipe clean, wipe clean. That one's all done. On the inside, we do have to do the outside. I'm gonna come here. I'm starting to get a lot of caulking built up. I'm gonna clean the sponge and clean my hands. Wring it out. I'm short, probably should have a ladder right here. I'm gonna show you something that most painters do not do, but I do. Caulk the top. Doesn't take much more effort. But what happens if the customer gets up here and sees, or they want to clean the tops of their door jambs and it's all rough, dusty, dirty. There's big crack, that stuff's falling down inside. New construction sometimes has raw wood. If you use really cheap caulking because it's new construction and you're trying to cut costs, cut corners, is your caulking, if you read the TDS, will it bond to raw wood, or does the wood need to be primed first? Big stretch can go onto raw wood. So use a good caulking. It also, these big gaps, if you see big gaps, big stretch is one of the caulkings and sealants that will stretch more than just about any product out there on the market. So it'll span these big gaps. It bonds extremely well, so there's not gonna be any separation. It's gonna be gluing. Sometimes you got stuff like this, that's a little bit loose. it's gonna glue seal that all back together. So now I'm gonna come across, I'm gonna be running out here pretty soon, so I wanna make sure I have another caulking tube available to me quickly. I can feel heat coming out of this vent. Looks like I'm out now. I gotta get another caulking tube refill. Here comes the refill from Noah. So, new caulking tube, really important. This is really important to the success of getting the perfect bead of caulking, 45-degree angle. So now this is where I got a big gap. I'm gonna fill this big gap, not big enough to put like backer rod in, but big enough that big stretch will actually span that gap, not separate, not split or crack. That's why I like big stretch. Now you'll pay a little bit more for it, but there's nothing worse than getting callbacks on your job, fixing stuff because your caulking failed. So do the carpenter's favor and use a good caulking also. Make their big gaps look good. So part of the art of, caulking and putting the bead of caulking on to begin with is knowing like how fast to actually pull your gun and matching that with your trigger pull. So if I, have a slow trigger pull and move too fast, what's gonna happen is I'm gonna have a bead of caulking that looks like this. That's not gonna actually fill the crack right there, and there's a good chance that at any movement in the house, that could actually separate. What I wanna do is I wanna slow down, put more caulking in, where it's actually gonna fill that gap inside, and it's gonna touch more of both sides of that gap. So that's a nice, good, smooth bead right there. And if I just take light pressure with a wet finger, tool that, I'm pressing it down into the crack farther. Now you can see I got a nice fill there. Where I went too fast, I didn't have as good of a fill right there. One of the great things about caulking is you can go back now, or you can go back at final and fix it. Just like that, it's fixed. When I do this for multiple days, my fingers start to crack and they start to hurt. There's nothing worse than your hands hurting. And I use this product right here, Workman's Friend, barrier skin cream. So I'm gonna dry my hands off. I put it on multiple times. I put it on twice today. It kind of creates a barrier on your hands that help them from drying out, cracking out, helping the chemicals from not causing your fingers to dry and crack as much. So I put, some of this on just a little bit, rub it in, and then I'm gonna let it dry and begin caulking again. But there's nothing worse than getting those cracks in your fingers, man. That's so painful. And then having to caulk with that. So it dries pretty quick, so it's gonna dry and I'll begin caulking again. All right, I'm gonna talk about getting ready to spray new construction and getting suited up, PPE, personal protective equipment. I can't stand, just getting caked with overspray, dust, going home feeling like a dust ball. So I suit up with Tyvek suits. I could care less what brand. DuPont Tyvek seem to be overpriced, ripoff, but these are what was available to me. They're typically around 12 bucks. I mean, it should be like $4, but I buy suits, slip them on. A lot of times I'll take up the excess by wrapping myself in tape unless I'm reusing the suit. In new construction, I typically reuse them. Like I've reused the one out here so far 4 times. It got pretty caked, so I'm swapping out to another one. I buy double X's. I wanna be able to, whether it's cold and I got a jacket, I want to be able to slip over my shoes. I don't wanna have to take my shoes off. So I wear a suit and I buy double X. So you do you and buy whatever size you want, but I'll show you. Like the double X's, the legs are big enough that your feet just slide right through them, which is super nice. So now I'm protected. I also don't like wasting my shoes, boots, with 1,000 pounds of dust and overspray. So when I'm doing new construction and when I'm doing like fences, like oil-based fences and stuff, getting those non-drying oils on your boots and your clothing, it stinks forever, stinks up your dryer, etc., your washing machine. So new construction and fences, I boot up. So now I'm gonna slip that on. I always wear gloves. Kind of that type of guy that just doesn't like paint on my hands. I know a lot of you can't stand the fact that I wear gloves, but hey, to each his own. So there's the suit. You can see it's like super baggy. A lot of times I try to get rid of this excess so it doesn't touch your walls as you're going in and out of closets, etc. But once you tape it up, you have to kind of just tear it off and it ruins it. The next thing, I do wear my respirator is somewhere around here. I always wear a respirator, so doing new construction, I always wear a head sock. And I've gone through I think 3 of these so far. They're really cheap, but I'm cheap. And so I take them off and take them home and wash them. That's how cheap I am. So I just slip on a head sock so I don't get tons of overspray all over my hat. Head sock on. My bald noggin is protected. When I get ready, I'm gonna zip it up. If I need a little ventilation, until then, I'll leave it unzipped. I do like them that they just come down, cover everything. The legs slip down, go over my shoes, but you can see how big it is. If you gotta get in and out of closets, you can't see me talk my lips because they're covered. Now you can read my lips. So there it is. I'm ready to go. I'm gonna go get my mask. I'm gonna go in, start shooting a bedroom. So this is what I look like in new construction, suited up, all protected. When I'm all done spraying, I can just strip this stuff off and I'm all clean, ready to get my truck. I don't like my truck to be loaded up, full of dust that I just brought out of this job site. The booties, I toss them. I usually don't reuse them because they'll rip on the bottom, but let's go. This is what the Michelin Man looks like, or a Marshmallow Man, whatever you want to call them. Last thing, pre-filters. I change them every day I spray, because if you don't change them, they'll get clogged. You'll start taking in paint around your mask. So I'm gonna get my mask on. Let's go. Right, in this video, we're gonna be talking about spraying doors in new construction. So this is kind of a typical scenario, what it looks like, spraying doors. I'm gonna talk about there's multiple options, how to go about spraying doors in new construction. And a lot of that is just, it depends on, your comfort level spraying doors standing versus spraying doors laying flat. There's a lot of different schools of thought now. One of the beauties about new construction is all the space you do have to be able to do a lot of doors. Now I have a living room right here. This is all the doors from the upstairs. We stood them all up right here. We've already got them, prepped. We got them sanded. We got them sprayed the first coat. Then we sand them again. We sprayed the second coat. They're all completely done now. When they're dry, we begin taking them down. We begin stacking them out in the garage and getting them, out of the way. There's multiple options we'll talk about. The option that I use, that I favor in new construction, is standing them up with a metal door stand right here. Now I've, came up with my own door stands that are solid steel door stands that are extremely sturdy, that I screw up there. There's a lot of different things, guys do. They'll take stir sticks, they'll take pieces of trim. There's a lot of different options, and that's, standing doors up. The Foam Pro ones I did for quite a few years. They're plastic. What you don't want to do is set them outside. Once again, from my personal experience, today's a windy day. We were working on a house. We set them up outside, and they blew over after I sprayed them. Complete disaster. So don't stand doors up outside. You can stand them up in a garage, drop cloths, paper down, to protect things. So I stand them up in kind of like in an accordion fashion like this. I like to be able to walk in and out of them, spray. This is very convenient. The house is just PVA primed. I showed some videos of this, on social media recently, and people are saying, oh my gosh, you're getting overspray on the roof, on the ceiling, and it's only PVA primed. It doesn't matter where you get overspray anywhere. You get, doesn't matter getting overspray on the floor, because just like the ceiling, the floor is going to be covered with tile, LVP or carpet, something is going to be covering this subfloor. Another thing, somebody had talked about, and commented on is as I'm spraying these doors, they're like, overspray is falling on the other doors. Now, when you're spraying these doors, as fast as I can spray these doors, by the time I do the two at the end and I'm spraying the next two, and if overspray is going up and falling down those doors, they're still sopping wet. And the overspray is not going to do anything. It's not going to make it rough. It's not going to cause an issue. If you sprayed the first two doors down there and you went off and did something else, 30 minutes later you came back, those were dry, and you sprayed the next two doors and you're shooting over the top, yes, now overspray could end up being a problem. One person mentioned, why don't you put cardboard shields and screw cardboard shields to the top? You could do that, but then the paint's going to bridge from your door to the shield. When you go to pull it off, you're going to have problems. I've done this method right here for over 25 years, and it absolutely works. Now, this method, standing them up, you'll see down here, I have the doors sitting on stir sticks. So from a learning lesson, if you had them sitting on the floor, paint will get built up over multiple coats, and it's going to bridge from the door to the floor. And when you go to move the door, it's going to stick to the floor, and it might pull paint off the door, or it might leave paint, film, kind of like rough and jagged along the bottom that you have to sand off. So I just take break stir sticks. They're free from the paint store. I break them, stack them on the doors, and then we paint it just like that. Now, when you're spraying the doors, they're on a floor, a dirty floor. Before we actually stand up these doors, we shop vac the whole floor really, really good. We shop vac, and I'm pretty particular. I shop vac, the whole room. And then we begin the process of standing up the doors, and we stand them all up. We did the initial prep work, them just leaning up against the wall. So that's the initial sand. So we sand them, we vacuum, dust them with a microfiber cloth, then we begin standing them up. Once we get them all stood up, we go back and vacuum the whole perimeter around the doors, in and out of the doors, because the last thing you want to do is be kicking dust up onto the door and making the bottom of the door rough. So we're very particular about vacuuming and cleaning. I am holding a super stacker, if you've been wondering what's in my hand. You know, some people are uncomfortable spraying up if you don't have the experience because you think you might get runs. One thing, you know, even this is probably the most difficult scenario to spray is a flat door, smooth face door. There's no wood grain on it. A lot of doors, like 3-panel doors and stuff, they're really forgiving. You can't see, you know, imperfections and stuff like that in somebody that sprays bad. This is gonna show, you know, everything. Your overlaps, if you're not overlapping enough, getting dry feathered edges, and you're not getting it gelled in enough, you're really gonna see it really bad. But, you know, you'll figure it out. And this is the easiest way to me to do it, the fastest way to do it, you know, versus stacking your doors. Super stackers, you'll put them on the ends of the doors, you'll spray the door flat, flip it over, spray the next door, and then you'll stack them, and you begin stacking them. And instead of having to take up all this room right here, they'll just stack in one place. So you can stack them out in the garage, or I can stack them over in the corner. One of the reasons I don't use super stackers or door deckers, this is actually, I think I might have said super stacker, but this is a door decker. There's another type of doors that stack. They're called super stackers, and I've used them both. I like them both. I like them both equally. This one's metal, super stackers are plastic. But one of the issues with them is the doors are stacked, you know, pretty close. Ventilation becomes a problem, and the doors take a long period of time because there's no ventilation in between the doors, and all the chemicals outgassing just keep the door dry for a significant period of time. And one time we were doing a lot of doors doing that. They sat in the garage. The next day they were still wet. That becomes a problem because you know, dust, debris can start landing, getting inside there, and, you know, causing the doors to be rough. Now, when we do this method, we force dry them by having a box fan blowing through, and you get ventilation going through, but then you run the risk of contamination. In new construction, we use super stackers and door deckers a lot of times where we don't have all this open space of spray, like in a say a repaint. So this course is all about new construction. New construction, you typically have just unlimited space, and it's so nice. That's one of the benefits to it. So here's the doors stood up. The process we went through, kind of explained it a little bit. We got doors sitting over here. We sand them first with a Film Tech or Ecostorm. Typically, like I typically would use like a 320 or 220. These doors came out primed, you know, really bad primed. Whoever the door company is, they primed them. I gotta say, a terrible job. They were extremely eggshelly. That's all gonna show up in your finish. So I used a pretty aggressive abrasive, a 150, to sand them all and sand them flat. You know, and it's really important because they are flat. The majority of doors we deal with have a wood grain to them, and you wouldn't see that. But so we used the 150, sanding them flat. We had them stacked up, and we began shop vacuuming them. You got to get all that dust off, shop vac them, and then we wipe them down with a microfiber cloth. And then I sprayed on my first coat. So I sprayed on my first coat. Once the first coat is on, I used Film Tech, a 1/2-inch foam abrasive, to just lightly and quickly sand them. You don't want to, I'll take and just rub them down to feel. If there was anything missed in the initial sand, I'll rub them with my bare hand. And then after I rub them and I don't feel anything, you know, and they feel like glassy smooth, then I'll continue the sanding and then just wipe them down with a microfiber cloth. But in these contoured edges and stuff, you're gonna wanna touch that, wipe that, feel everything. But I use a 1/2-inch ultra fine open cell sponge, which is an EcoSilk sponge. Now, anywhere from you know, fine, super fine, ultra fine. I really like an ultra fine, you know, especially on these doors, since the finish is really, really smooth. But you're just trying to knock down anything that might be a little bit rough on the door. So we just quickly hit them all, wipe them down once again with a microfiber cloth, you know, right after we sand them. And then we shoot the second coat. and then they set for a day before we take them down and stack them out of the way. What you don't want to do is leave these here and do any type of spraying of your walls or your trim or anything where you could get overspray on them. If the garage is warm enough and it's warm enough outside, the temperature, you don't have a lot of fluctuations, you're not worried about, the doors warping anything, just stack them outside. If you're worried about warping them, we actually have right here in the kitchen, a wall right here where I know there's countertops, cabinets, everything's covered there. We can just begin stacking them right here on the wall. That's going to be out of the way. These ones, they could go up into a closet upstairs and out of the way because these are all the upstairs doors. Once I spray the closet, we can put it inside and then cover that up and they'll be protected inside. So there's the process, what it looks like. Make sure the edges of the doors, they're sanded. You want them smooth. When you're vacuuming, shop vacuuming, a lot of times there's a lot of dust and debris from where they cut this. So make sure you shop back around that because you'll get debris blowing through this hole and onto the other door. It's kind of something you'll run into that I just want to touch on there. But we're gonna run you through, give you a look at what this whole process looks like. Standing them up, this method right here, I've actually done this by myself. It looks like it's possibly a two-man job. A lot easier with two people, but these are hollow core doors, light doors. I'll grab two of them. I'll have a stool and I just open them up right here. I'll just hold them myself, climb up on the stool, screw them together. Once again, it is easier with two people, a lot easier. But I've done this method by myself. I've done the Foam Pro door method by myself. Super stackers, door deckers, that's a two-person thing because you have to have one person on one end, another person on the other end to flip them and rotate them. So if you're doing that method and spraying them down, then you'll have to have two people. So one of the, I'll just talk about maybe the drawbacks if you're not comfortable spraying up, runs, sags. If you're not comfortable doing that when you're spraying them down, you can absolutely load tons of paint on them instead of having to two-coat them. You really still should two-coat them, but you can load tons of paint. You're not going to get runs. Flip it over, load tons more paint, no runs. So you can be confident you're not going to get any runs. But once again, to me, it doesn't eliminate a step because I always two-coat them anyways. And if you're not confident spraying the doors with without getting runs on them, then I'm not sure how you're going to tackle and spray the door jambs, and the window sills and stuff like that if you're doing full wrap windows without getting runs either. And same goes the walls and stuff. So I just highly suggest learning, getting comfortable with standing up when you're doing new construction. All right, now we're going to start taking our doors down. Just like they go up, I'm just going to be unscrewing them. One person's going to be grabbing the one door, removing it, leaning up against the wall. Make sure who's ever handling the doors, that's taking them down, they should wash their hands before handling the doors. The last thing you want to do is get dirty handprints on the door. If the doors aren't 100% cure, it's very important that your fingers go into the door hole and the other finger goes where the hinges are. Do not manhandle or grab the doors. So that one's ready to go. If you're using a long cure time paint, some paints take 30 days to cure. Say for instance, one of the common paints we use, Sherwin-Williams Emerald Urethane. It's a great product, but you could, if you're the same day, next day, you could easily, put a fingerprint on the door, and that could be really bad. So try to handle the doors as little as possible. Anything that can scratch the doors, keep them in your pockets. Watch the door that the handler has. Make sure you're unscrewing the one that he's got. You control the other door. He takes off with that door. It's good to have a drill that has a hook on it. Just like that. So we're going to move all these doors out of the way. Set up new doors. So I'm going to find two holes, center them. I want the are my steel door hanger, kind of coming off at like a 45-degree angle. This is a really critical step. When you screw these in, make sure they're in the center of the door and not coming off at an angle. The last thing you want to do is split it out the side of the door. Typically what I do is my first door, I put in 2 screws. I want to set my drill so it ratchets. I don't want it too tight, overly tight, but I want it tight enough. So 2 screws. I think I got 3 more downstairs doors that'll go right here in this place also. I've got the front door. So the front door doesn't match height-wise any other of the doors. The front door, I'm probably gonna shoot that laying down because you do one side is interior color, opposite side is exterior color. So I'll be doing that laying down. I'll bring my sawhorses in here. We'll show that in another video. Odd man out right here. This is 3, so we're hooking 3 together, and that's gonna be our final doors. And we're gonna inspect them and begin spraying our first coat. We've got everything vacuumed. We vacuumed really well all the way around, so I'm not gonna be kicking up dust. I think there might be some question when you're spraying these doors, is the overspray gonna carry from where because I'll start here on this end, I'll start spraying, work my way down this way. Is the overspray gonna get on these doors over here and mess them up? It's not gonna mess them up because these things are gonna be completely saturated with paint. Those are gonna be still wet when I'm spraying these down here, so it's not gonna be an issue. So ready to get going. Little tip, I always turn the heat up, crank the heat up, like everything to be warmed up, before I start spraying. I forgot to turn the heat up, when we left yesterday, so everything's a little bit cool. But you want to turn the heat off, once you start spraying, because you don't want, the dust, carrying up into the return air and going into the filters in the furnace. So, stuff feels, a little bit cool, but, I typically like this stuff to be room temperature. It's kind of a little bit cool, but we'll see how the product hangs. Say if like some paints, trim paints are very fickle and like to be sprayed at higher temperatures. And so, I like to just get the heat cranked up to at least like 75 before I start spraying. Right now, the internal temperature in here feels about 70. The product is a new product I've been using, Scuff Tough. I just started testing it out. It does hang pretty well in cooler temperatures. So, once again, if you do get a run, it's always sandable and fixable. So here we go, we're gonna start spraying. I kind of like hitting the edges first. I'll hit the edges first, then I'll come back and begin spraying my faces. So like I would spray, these edges, then I'd come back, start right here, spray these 2 faces, work my way around the other side and come around and get this face. Always a good idea to have, somebody managing the hose. Now you can do it without, a hose manager. If the hose hits the door, then you got a touch up that you got to deal with. So you can just take and hit the edges and then continue or hit like this first edge and just do your edges as you go. I like to just hit my edges straight on all 4 of them and then begin going. Now tops and bottoms, interior doors, don't get weather, don't get moisture. There's no issue with warranties on an interior door, so we don't worry about painting the tops and bottoms of the interior door. Now, if you were on you had a second story and you're looking down on the top of a door, you might want to, paint the tops of the doors. If we were doing tops or bottoms, we would do them first, laying down. We would just roll them with a weenie roller, and then we would set them up to spray them after it dries. This is what it looks like spraying. I'm gonna be spraying. You got to just choose a speed. You really have to just look at the paint going on and in it hitting and just gelling out and being nice and saturated. I overlap 50% as I go. If you go too fast, the paint's going to dry too fast. It's gonna end up being textured, rough. If you're going too fast, not overlapping enough, it's gonna be dry where your overlaps are and not heavy enough, and it's not gonna gel out and have a nice smooth finish either. So you really have to actually just look and see what you're doing. You have to be really focused and pay attention, see the paint hitting the surface and see it like hitting and being wet enough. If it looks dry, then you need to slow down. If it looks like it's just way saturated, too wet, it might run, you just speed up. So this is how I spray a door. I'm using a Tritech Fine Finish 510 tip. I like a wider fan when we're doing multiple doors because you can spray them a lot faster. So here we go. So those doors are done. Now I'll give you another look without doing the edges first. I'm looking at it, inspecting it, they look pretty glassy. So here's another look. Another key when doing the doors is, I'm gonna go all the way down, all the way over to the top. If I don't go over the top, I'm gonna get a heavy spot where I, turn around, likely to get a run, all the way over the top. You can see if I just do my edges, turn it, I can do the edges all at once. All right, so I got them all sprayed. One of the things, just cleared the dust out really fast, opened up the doors, opened up the windows. I turned on the forced air heating, so we'll just blow all the dust out of the room and let these things dry. It's just gonna take a couple minutes, and then I'm gonna close the doors because it actually is really cold outside, so I want it to warm up in here pretty fast. I'm just gonna inspect them, make sure they look really good and super saturated. See if I notice any dry spots on any of them. That's the first coat. After the first coat dries, a couple hours, we can sand them with an ultra-fine 1/2-inch sponge and then do our second coat. They look pretty dang good. Kind of one of the key things is get the heat cranked up so it flash dries them in case you got it on, too heavy, to stop any type of runs. The doors being cool, if I turn the heat up, as soon as I'm done spraying, it'll help get them to skim over and start drying. And these are already starting to dry right there, starting to look pretty good. All right, so I'm going to give you, a few of my tips and recommendations, how to spray a door. This is actually how to spray a door specifically laying down, because it's a little bit different spraying a door laying down versus, standing up. This is the man door going out of a garage. This is kind of a little bit unusual. This is a PVC type door. It's got a smooth finish. It's very critical that you prep it properly, dust it properly, mask it properly. I've already painted the opposite side of this door, the interior color. It's the color and the paint of the inside of the garage, the trim of the inside of the garage. So now we're working on the exterior side, and because it's a smooth door, it's a new house, we want to get this side up perfect. We want it to look, super smooth. We don't want to risk any runs, spits, etc. We don't want to deal with it hanging on a jamb and with hardware stuff. It's a brand new door, brand new slab, so it doesn't even have hardware installed, so I don't even have to deal with that, which is nice. So you can see, how we've masked and prepped this so far. When I spray this, because the opposite side, if the opposite side is already painted, you don't want overspray getting on that because you just spent a lot of time finishing it. So the way we mask it is we drop 9-inch plastic with inch tape and tack it down with the inch tape just like this. It hangs down, and whatever you're setting on it, we lay it on buckets, sometimes stacked buckets. These are sawhorses. There's a lot of different ways you can do it, but you want your paper, tacked down, so when you're spraying, the force of the sprayer, if you're hitting it this way, it doesn't flip it up onto your freshly painted surface. If it flips it up on the door, you're gonna have to immediately wipe that door off, get that paint off, let it dry, and reshoot it and stuff. So I say this because it's happened to me multiple times, paper flipping up, whether it be outside, because the wind flipped it up, or whether the pressure from the gun flipped it up. It's happened to me multiple times. Bugs have landed on doors like this multiple times. Beetles walked across it. The cotton from cottonwood trees have landed on it and stuff. So we're inside of a protected area, so I don't have, or less likely to have any of those elements, once I spray this door. Now, when we spray a door like this, typically an exterior color, this is a really dark green. It's typically gonna cover in one coat. We're shooting at one coat. If you're gonna be some vibrant color, red or something like that, it might be multiple coats. My goal is to shoot this thing in one coat. Now, typically when I'm spraying doors, I'm using fine finish tips. On this door, I'm using a Tritech 510. So I'll either use a 510 or 310. Those are the two tips I use. A 510 is just gonna make you be able to paint it in less passes faster. Less passes means less likelihood of spits or things going wrong. So you want to get your gun set up. I like to use extensions a lot of the time because I can reach all the way across the door and shoot it down with an extension. This door is not too bad, but if I can't reach all the way across safely, then I'll do 3/4 of the door, walk to the other side and shoot the door. But here I don't have to worry about edges. The edges are all masked off. The sides of it are the inside color. I'm just spraying the face. So I'm gonna just spray the face of it. Now, spraying the face, I have angles right here on this door, this the raised sides right here, lower panel right here. So keep conscious and aware. I don't want to spray against that because I won't get it covered 100%. I want to spray directly down on it. And I'm going to start spraying this door. You never want to start spraying on the door because even though there's no extension, you could get a spit. So I'm going to start spraying off the door, come all the way off the door on the opposite end and do your passes off the door. Never start on the door, never stop on the door. When I'm done, I don't release the trigger right here either because you can get a spit there also. If you're using a short extension or any type of extension, the longer the extension, the larger the spit you're gonna get and more spits. So I'm not using an extension at all right now, but your gun, even without an extension, can spit. You got, holes right here that could kick dust out of the holes. Probably should stuff paper down in those holes, to keep dust from kicking out of there. We dusted it off with a duster brush, then wiped it off with a microfiber cloth. If you have to do any sanding, you want to do your sanding of the door. If it's been painted before and it's a gloss or something like that, you want to definitely degloss that by mechanically sanding it. But this is a primed PVC door. Bottoms and tops don't need to be painted on this style of door. You'll know because the door will have a warning thing right here saying, in order for, the warranty to be in place and not voided, you have to coat the top and bottom of the door. That's not the case with this door. So I'm gonna get ready to shoot this door. You're gonna see, how it looks, me shooting it. So I definitely want to fill these holes up right here. Don't want anything kicking out of these holes. So you can see I just stuffed paper down inside there. You don't want it sticking out on the sides of your door at all. You want it big enough that it's not going to come flying out either. So big enough, it'll actually stick to, because we put tape on the opposite side of the door so no paint could go through the holes either and get overspray. So now the question might be, I think somebody said something, one of my social media accounts the other day, that overspray is gonna kick down and get on the other side of the door with that paper. I can tell you from my experience, never once in my career have I had paint curl around that paper and come up, that 9-inch paper, and come up. Gravity wants to take it down and it takes it down. Pump is set up. Pumps, I get asked, what pressure? Typically 2200 PSI when I'm spraying trim or exteriors. Pump set at 2200 PSI. I'm always gonna take a few test sprays and begin spraying. You should strain your paints. If you don't strain your paints, you can get spits, clogs, and stuff that can cause issues with spraying the door. This is gonna take multiple passes, and spits are just part of the game when it comes to airless spraying, and you just hope it doesn't spit, on the door when you're spraying. The front door, it actually spit on the first pass, but it ended up leveling out. So let's see how it goes. You can actually start spraying right here and work your way across. Then you're leaning over what you just sprayed. Or you can start right here and work your way that direction. I don't have a problem working over what I just sprayed, but that's something to think about. Good practice, bad practice. I typically like to just start right in front of me, get in my rhythm and pace when I'm spraying it. I'm gonna start spraying it. First pass is gonna come across here, and then you're just gonna overlap 50% as you go. You gotta watch when the paint's hitting the door, and you're kind of seeing how the coverage is. Do I need to slow up? Do I need to speed down? Seeing what's going on. You gotta see it, you gotta hear it, and you gotta feel it coming out of the gun in order to get a good finish. All right, so here we go. I'm gonna start spraying. Looks like it's spraying out pretty good. When I look at it, it looks like it has a super nice finish across the whole door. Now, when I was spraying this, first pass, because you're overlapping 50% as you go, so you want to get 100% coverage. So your first pass, when you overlap 50%, that first pass, it won't have two passes over it. So I hit the first pass twice, and I hit the last pass twice. I had this angle, like a 45-degree angle. I know when I was coming across straight down, it doesn't hit it as well, just straight down. I noticed like right off the bat, I'm paying attention of everything that's going on. I'm paying attention to the paint, that is it covering 100%? You know, in the one pass, I see it look pretty good. On the second pass, I noticed it covered 100%. I was watching that, paying attention to that. I noticed straight down on the first pass, on the 45-degree angle, it wasn't covering it as well as I thought, and so I just slightly turned the gun to face the 45-degree angle. It's very subtle, very slight. And then when I came over here, I kind of slightly changed it to face the 45-degree angle also. When I went to the opposite side, I did the same exact thing. When I get to the ends, I'm coming across to the end, I come out and just fade it out just a little bit. Come across here, just fade it up just a little bit. You see, I've overpassed, got overspray both sides. One thing, this is exterior paints. I mean, some people are gonna look at it and say, it's eggshelly exterior paints. When you paint them, they look like really eggshelly, and then they begin to dry out over time and level out. Exterior paints don't give you like a glass like finish like interior enamels do. They act differently, they spray differently. A color like this, heavy bodied, tons of tint to create this color. The paint, it doesn't atomize as well as lighter colors, so you won't get like a super smooth finish, but this will level out very, very nice. I look at it, it looks like it's covered 100%. Whether you think it needs 2 coats, 1 coat, 2 coats, you can do another pass over it after it dries. It'll be drying about an hour, do another pass on it, and then pull the masking and you're good to go. But it looks like it's covered 100% to me. It looks pretty dang good. I got a nice even finish across the whole board. What I'm looking for right here, across the whole door, I'm looking for anything that doesn't match up. Is it have the same finish across the whole door, or is there something that looks like light, what I would say like kind of a dry feather, because I went too fast or I didn't overlap 50%. I looked at it, I can't tell from this lighting. I have to get over into this lighting to actually see it, because I get reflection and glare coming through the window. I can see it 100% from top to bottom. It has the exact same finish. From top to bottom, it's good to go, and it's gonna dry out and look awesome. So there it is, how I go about spraying a difficult door on the exterior of a new house. All right, I'm going to talk about a handrail, one of the accent pieces I did. I believe it's like a hemlock, or I don't believe it's pine. I'm not sure. I think it's hemlock. So it's a piece of wood, solid piece of wood. They cut and did corners on it. It was installed. There's multiple options you can do with that thing, including painting it and staining it and some other things. The customer just wanted it stained. I took a Minwax Early American stain, and it's a quick dry stain. Brought it in here. The very first thing I did, I sanded it with my Ecosand 3x4 sander and an ultrafine sponge, 1/2-inch sponge, and a handrail that's got contoured edges, routed edges. It's super fast, super easy to sand, with a 3x4 sander, plus it's hooked to my HEPA-vac. You're not creating a lot of dust. I put it on my sawhorses, make sure I put down 2 cardboard shields down, so it would protect it while I'm sanding it, rolling it over and stuff, and any type of vibration wouldn't scratch it. So set it on there, sanded it pretty quick, and then I began the staining process. I used the conditioner first. So it's a soft wood, any type of soft woods, Hemlock and pine, are very notorious for being blotchy when you stain them, having dark spots and light spots all over them. Anytime you do any type of staining, you should use a conditioner first. So I brushed on a conditioner, on the entire handrail, then let that set for a while, let it set to penetrate. And the conditioner is kind of like, if you smell it, it smells like paint thinner, like mineral spirits. So it's like kind of like saturating the wood before, and it's allowing the stain to not penetrate so deeply in other areas and not so deeply in other areas. It kind of just pre-saturates the wood with a chemical that makes it so you get an even stain. Now read the TDS or read the directions on your conditioner, because the conditioner, when you apply it, some give you specifications on when you need to apply your stain. So you want to make sure you apply it within that window of opportunity. Say if it was 8 hours, that you need to apply the stain, and you came back the next day, applied the stain, it's probably going to be blotchy. So you would need to recondition it. So I brushed on my conditioner, went off, was doing some other things, then I came back about an hour later, brushed on the stain. One of the things about the conditioner, it gives you a lot of working time with the stain. So I was able to brush the stain on the whole entire piece here, and then got a clean rag, wiped that whole thing off completely. I wiped it off completely, and then I'll let it set and dry according to specifications on the can, and then I took it outside to spray it with my Renner 2K Poly 851. Now I took it outside, and to spray it outside, I was using my Apollo Precision 6 HVL speed sprayer. I could have sprayed it right here, but simultaneously I was working on this project right here also. I sprayed this thing twice. It was completely saturated with the product, scuff tough, and I was a little bit worried about like the dust created by doing my handrail, that the dust would lift in the air and settle down on this and mess up that. So I took it outside, set it out in the sun where it would dry, just like fast. And so I was able to do, I think I actually did 5 coats on it. I think I did 4 coats on it, sanded in between coats with the ultrafine EcoSilk sponge just really quickly. It just felt like absolute glass. It wasn't quite dry. Tried to move it into the garage too quickly. I set it down on some trim and it rolled off the trim, and so I had to take it back outside, re-sand it and shoot it again, but it just came out absolutely perfect. So that's kind of what it looks like doing a handrail. I do like you have the options of using water-based products, urethane type products, lacquer type products, varnishes. To me, I don't like chemical type products that are flammable, so I don't like lacquers, especially. I don't want to work with anything flammable. I really like water-based products. I like water-based 2K polyurethanes, and specifically Renner 851, so that's what I shot it with. It dries as faster than a lacquer. It sands as easy or easier than a lacquer, and then it's more significantly more durable than lacquer. So highly recommend it, Renner 2K Poly 851. So there's a little bit about talking about my process doing a wood handrailing that you'll probably run into on any type of house that has a second story. All right, in this lesson I'm going to be talking about masking. I'm masking a room. I'm going to go over some of the tools I have when doing, I'll just start from the top, the door jambs. I always have a tough gaff with me and 1.5 inch tape. So all your door jambs are gonna be run with 1.5 inch tape. I use a variety of frog tapes. I'll do a lesson on what frog tapes I use when it comes to new construction and why I use them in another lesson. But when it comes to cutting like sharp corners and stuff, I typically have a 2-edge knife that has a blade. I always switch that blade out and have a nice sharp blade. I have a second blade with me, and this could suffice for just the one blade. This is used for cutting the plastic for door jambs. You need something with a long blade to be able to cut through your plastic. This one makes it a little bit difficult if you're just trying to use a 2-edge knife to do it. So I typically have, this is what we call a snap snap knife or just a couple bucks, that I use that just for cutting my plastic, you know, for my door jambs. Before I mask my baseboards, I have a duster brush because I sand my walls. So one of the very first things I came in here, sanded the walls, made sure they're smooth. That's going to create dust on the baseboards. I have a duster brush to dust off baseboards. I have a putty knife with me. You may run into something on the walls while you're doing your final masking. There's spackle outside there. You just may run into a situation where you have, you know, one last thing. You got a spackle when you were actually sanding. I might have seen one last thing. You want to get it all before you spray your top coat. There's nothing like spraying the top coat than having to do a touch up right in the middle of the walls. You can see X's where I had patches where we saw with our inspection light where we patched things. I have my gloves when I'm sanding. I don't use gloves when I'm masking at all. I use my gloves when I'm getting ready to spray. I'll put my gloves on, then I'll run my fingers on my masking tape right before I spray to get one final press, because some places they'll start to come loose, possibly depending on the type of paint you're using. Typically have two maskers. I always have a paper masker and a plastic masker. Whatever you do, do not like load and reload your maskers from plastic to paper. Always have two. You're not nearly as fast as efficient if you're switching around. So typically have two with me or two in the room. Straight cut blade on there for cutting. You know, you can see right there, that actually didn't cut straight right there. That's what the straight cut blade is supposed to resolve. So the straight cut blade actually was off the roll. That's why I didn't cut it straight. So blades, film blades on both maskers. Even my paper masker has a film blade. That way your maskers are universal. You can't use a paper blade on plastic, so I hate switching blades. I don't have any paper blades even in my vehicle. So maskers with me, ladder hook, so you can actually keep your masker with you while you're masking. There's nothing like walking back and forth and grabbing your tools. You can see I have all these tools are with me, so do not like have them laying around and happen to go get them and search for them. Knee pads. Actually, I started using these knee pads recently. Got them from the International Building Show. Every pair of knee pads I've ever worn in my life slide down my legs. I can't stand them. These actually work absolutely amazing. So when I'm caulking baseboards and masking baseboards, I really like wearing knee pads. They actually make me faster. I can move faster, and my knees aren't bothering me when I'm masking. All right, in this video, I'm gonna be talking about the tapes that I use doing new construction. Now, these tapes I have sitting in front of me, these are tapes out in my trailer, and I have a wide variety of tapes from frog tape that I use for different scenarios. And I'm gonna talk about, you know, the ones that I use most common in new construction. You know, on this job, I've been testing out some tapes because I'm using a new product called Scuff Tough from Sherwin-Williams. And, you know, how is the tapes gonna react to Scuff Tough and how is it gonna stick to it? You eventually get accustomed to tapes that stick to certain paints better than other tapes. And, you know, I'm finding that on this job with the product, you know, Scuff Tough, there are tapes now designed specifically to adhere to low VOC paints and stuff. Frog tape has, you know, very high adhesion tape. This tape actually sticks pretty good to low VOC paints. I'm not dealing with that kind of stuff here in this new construction house, but this is a product, you know, from Frog Tape that I have sitting here. I was going to show you 3-day release, you know, product. Release times, typically new construction, guys could be masking the windows off, trim off, spraying it, leaving it on for a week to 2 weeks, depending on the size of the house. So you want tape that has a longer release time if you're using that method. Most of the time I like to take and remove my masking when everything's wet, or at least the next day. But high adhesion tape, you know, sticks well to fences, concrete. Orange tape is a Frog Tape production tape, you know, a high adhesion, high tack production tape. This is the tape I use, just everyday tape, inside, outside of houses, everyday tape that I'd be using in new construction. And so I use it quite a bit. Typically this tape, the orange tape, doesn't have the polymer on the outside of the tape, which is the paint block technology, and it swells, doesn't allow paint underneath it, and so it performs it performs differently than, say, blue. The blue tape, you can see the polymer, it's a white dust on the outside. It swells when it gets wet, and so you'll get sharper lines, painted lines, if you're brushing and rolling up against it. New construction, we're spraying everything, and usually you don't get paint bleed underneath your tape when you're spraying, because you're not forcing paint up against the tape. And so just a production tape typically performs very well around the entire house doing new construction. It's 3-day release. So if you're gonna be leaving this on for more than 3 days, you wouldn't wanna be using a production tape, which is, I would say it's more common that new construction guys leave their tape on for more than 3 days. I highly recommend, if you're not pulling your tape same day, to use a different product. I typically am gonna decide to go into Frog Tape Blue, professional grade painter's tape right here. That's what I've been using predominantly on this house right here. This is the major difference between, this and the orange, besides price. This has got a longer release time. You're talking now a 14-day release, on this product. The tack is a little bit different. This doesn't stick as strong as this. So if you're having issues with your paint coming off and lifting off your freshly painted trim, you might want to side, towards the orange. But right here, it's been performing, pretty well on scuff top, as long as you run, your gloved hands over it right before you spray. Been using inch on a lot of stuff and 1.5 inches. I keep 2 sizes in my vehicles and no other sizes. I keep 1.5 inches and 2 inch. I've been using a lot of 1.5 inches. My maskers are always loaded with 1 inch. I do run around my my door jambs, do plastic with 1.5 inches. So you're gonna see 1.5 inches. I tack down with the 1.5 inches too. I tack the sides of windows with 1.5 inches. Keep it with me on my tough gaff. These are the 2 I would predominantly be using in new construction. I would typically, side towards this, doing the typical standard scenarios where we spray pull, same day. I'd be using this to save money. I'm not worried about paint bleeding underneath the masking, because once again, when you spray, you typically do not have paint bleeding underneath the masking. It's usually not an issue. This is, if you're, for some reason, if the floors are installed, occasionally happens, new construction. If floors are installed, you never want to, like hardwood floors. This is really designed for delicate surface flooring, hardwood floors, wallpaper, decorative finishes, Frog Tape delicate surface tape. I keep that in there. Anytime I'm masking on the floor, that's gonna be the tape I use. Frog Tape Green is pretty much my go-to interior and exterior tape when I'm doing repaints. I typically don't use it in new construction, but this is my favorite tape, when I'm masking windows on exteriors, when I'm masking windows interiors, when I'm trying to get straight lines on a wall or rounded corners, or when we're masking door jambs. I use a lot of Frog Tape Green. It has a longer release time than the blue, 21-day release. So if your masking's on there for more than 14 days, you should probably go from blue to green, because that's got a longer release time. Now, Frog Tape has come up with something brand new, and it's a 28-day release tape, Frog Tape Advanced, and it's premium washi tape. And it's a different paper than this version of green right here. The original green, this is a washi paper, a thinner paper, so it's not gonna leave as high or as large of a dam as this type of paper. The paper itself is great for contouring around like rounded contoured edges if you wanted to paint, say, a circle on a wall. So it conforms the curves and stuff a lot better than any of the other versions of Frog Tape. It's 2 times stronger than this original Frog Tape, and once again, it has a 28-day release. Washi paper, so the paper on this tape, washi paper, is a really smooth premium paper, and one of the things I really like about it, other than it conforms to curves and stuff really nicely, it's super thin, super strong, durable. If you're doing painted lines, etc., you're not going to see the dam as much, especially if you got to paint over it and repaint over it. It's going to be easier to get rid of that dam. But the the paper itself is smooth. So if you're masking really fast, running your fingers over the masking, you know, I've done it a lot of times in my career. I've burned my fingers running it over the masking, you know, so fast because I'm masking fast. You're less likely to do that with premium washi tape. So new product from Frog Tape. I used it spraying the front door, you know, down there. Performed amazing. Nothing bled underneath it on the glass. The adhesive was super strong. So something you might want to give it a try. It's brand new. I've heard some really good feedback from guys using it already, you know, on job sites. So there's a little bit about the tape and the tapes I use in new construction, and some of it is just like trial and error, what works for you. A lot of it comes down to what paints you're using, what tapes stick to the paints you use. If you use Frog Tape's line of tapes, they got something for everything. You can't go wrong. The end result, you're always gonna look like a professional did it using Frog Tape. All right, in this video lesson, I'm gonna give you some tips and tricks. Masking, not every scenario, you just have an easy door jamb on a wide open wall to mask. Here we've got a wall where it's hard to actually mask, and I'm gonna show you how you can mask. Get your tape up there, get a straight line. Now, nobody can actually see back there and to see whether your line is like completely perfect or not. You don't have to be perfect, but you know, who knows? You should, you know, still strive for perfection, but it doesn't have to be perfect because nobody can see it. So what I do to actually work with this, to get my masking down this wall, I'm going to, just like this, turn this corner. Now my tape is hanging down, and I'm gonna begin just working down the wall just like this. I'm gonna pull it out, and I'm just going to move it in with my these two fingers, move it in, press it, just like this. So I'm gonna work it down, tape's hanging, press it up against the wall, out, press it up against the wall. It's like this, I'll press it up. I don't want it on the wall, I want it on the trim. If you get it on the wall from somebody standing down here, if your masking comes out to the wall, they're gonna see your crooked line. I could have a crooked line right here, but it's hidden because it's actually on the trim. So I'm gonna get down to the bottom, and I'm gonna run this all the way down to the end, like I typically do. Either door jamb, I'm gonna end up masking this with my paper. So opposite side, same thing. So I'm gonna come up here, just gotta be able to do it, what we say, left-handed. So same thing. So I'm gonna tack it underneath, pull it down, run it up against the side, hold it, pull it up, pull it out, get it up against the trim, pull it out. So I'm just pulling it away if it's stuck on there too close. I'm gonna kind of measure it, get it down to the bottom, tear it off, put my roll back on my tough gaff so it's where I know it's at. Just like that. Pretty simple. I gotta fill in. Once I get my plastic, I'll fill in my paper on my baseboards. I'll flip around to the other side. We've got another tight side, and we got an open side. We'll show you that, and then we'll talk about cutting the plastic and doing batch plastic, you know, on our door jambs. All right, we're now doing the opposite side of this door jamb. Doing easy side first. Wide open, easy to see my line. Making sure my lines are perfect. Leave it open so I have something to tack to. Now, tight side. Gonna go get my tape up inside here, up against the wall, tack it down, get it up into the corner, pull it out, bring it up against the wall, tack it, bring it down, pull it up against the wall, tack it. Once again, nobody can see the side of the trim, but they can't see the wall. If your tape goes up against the wall, standing back there, you will see the crooked line. So I'm gonna run it all the way down on my paper. Now I'm gonna begin doing plastic. I got my 9x400 plastic. I'm gonna talk about batch doing the plastic and what I typically do. I typically do not do one door jamb at a time. I typically do all the door jambs. I'll run all the tape like this on all my door jambs, and then I'll begin batch doing my plastic, and I'll just run around, measure. I'm gonna cut. I have my knife someplace readily accessible when I'm batch doing this. This will just tack right to here. Another one, tack it, move to the next one. So the plastic's just gonna sit right there, and I'm gonna move the next one. I mean, you can get to a point where you just know, I know that's long enough. I can cut it, tack it on the plastic. You're gonna end up getting a feel for it. Now I'm just gonna go around, and this is hanging on every door jamb. Now I'm ready to go. It's the next batch task. I just pull it off. I begin tacking. Pull off your plastic, short side goes to the middle of the door jamb, just the edge of the plastic, just the edge, get it right up there. You don't want to have excess until you get to the opposite side, just in case you cut your plastic too short. You want to make sure you have enough to tack. So it'll tack down here this fast. Run your hands up on it. Same side, I'm batch doing things. So I'm gonna do the opposite side. So you're gonna take your plastic, find your plastic, your short end. This is the opposite side. So short end, get it up here, tack it. Get just the end of it. Tack it, get it up in there, fold it, press it. Just the end, don't get it too far. Tack it. Tack it. If you stuck it in your door jamb, just pop it back out. Tack it all the way up. I'm gonna take seam, because you got a seam right here exposed. This would be a leak. So we tack it to the tape right here, cover the seam. Opposite side, we begin again doing the same thing. So now opposite side, I come up here. That's why you take and you make sure you never want to be short. It's better to be too long, because all I'm going to do is roll it like this, and this takes up all the excess, boom, tack it. So I'm getting it up here, stretching it out. Now I'm tacking it. Now I want this all tight, because I don't want it what we call flopping in the wind with the sprayer. So I'm rolling it underneath, tacking it, rolling it underneath. You don't want to roll it out, because then it's going to like flap out. So now I've got nice tight plastic. Same thing. I come over here, got a little excess, roll it up, tack it down, roll it up, show you over here, stretch it out, get it to seal, roll it in, just like this. Fill that in. Before I get off my ladder, so I don't have to get up on it a second time, got my seam, tack it on the tape, fill my seam, just like that. Leak is gone. Ladder goes to the outside of the door, get rid of my tape. There, roll it, roll it, roll it, all the way down. Now I want it tight on the bottom, rolling it all in. Don't want anything flopping in the wind down there. Bam, done. Right there, opposite side. Pull your tape. If it flopped onto the trim, get it underneath, roll it, 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 get it underneath, blam, done. If I want to take, ensure no leaks, tighten it up at the bottom. No leaks, tighten it up at the bottom, just like that. It got baseboards exposed, fill it in so we don't have any leaks. Get a nice sharp line, press it in the corner, wrap it around. We're gonna tack that down. Come up over the top, tack it, leaks gone. Leaks gone. Same thing. All leaks, make all leaks go away. We've got right here, this can flap up. Don't want any paper kicking up when you're spraying. It's tight. This could actually flap up. Press, seal it down, good to go. Now this room is all ready to spray. That is how you mask a door jamb with 9x400 plastic, frog tape, 1.5 inch blue. All right, in this video, I'm going to show you how I go about spraying a door jamb. And I'm going to talk about the technique I use, the tip I use, and kind of go over why I do what I do, in this situation. So I'm going to talk about, my setup here. When I spray trim, because I'm not tall enough, I always to actually be able to get it at a good angle and shoot it at a right angle. I always use a 6-inch extension, when doing door jambs, and I never take the extension off when I'm doing, the baseboards or the window trim, anything. I like the reach the extension gives me, and it just makes the gun more versatile. I don't have to bend over as much doing baseboards, etc. So I have my 6-inch extension. If you're curious what the green device is, it's a fan pivot. It'll rotate your gun 90 degrees. That's a magnetic device that just rotates it for any reason. If I need to quickly rotate it, I can just rotate it, with my finger quickly and easily. I'm using a Tritech tip, so I'm a big fan of Tritech tips, and especially their fine finish tips. I don't think there's any fine finish tip made right now that's any better than Tritech's tips. The size of the tip, I use a 510 tip. And somebody, if you have any experience spraying trim, somebody are going to question, why don't you use a 310 tip? And when you see me spraying this door jamb and some trim, it's a 510 is a fairly wide fan compared to a 310. A 310 is, doubled at 6 inches wide. A 5 is 10 inches wide, so it gives you, more width. Now, the reason why I choose a 5 is because it's way faster spraying doors. So I spray doors always in new construction with a 5. If I have just 4-inch trim around the house or smaller, like on baseboards, etc., a lot of times I'll side towards a 3-inch fan. But since I'm using a 5 on the doors, I also have baseboards that a 3-inch fan doesn't cover 100% of the baseboard like in one shot. So I like using a 5 on these taller style baseboards. A 5, we've got our header up here. This header is not, it's not a little 4-inch header, which is like 3.5 inches. This is a larger header. And from this distance to that distance, I like my tip when I turn this corner to be able to span that whole distance. So that's why I use a 510 on these door jambs in this scenario. Now, like some people might think, you got too much overspray. The amount of overspray that you're gonna have, in certain situations doesn't overcome or outweigh the benefit that the spray pattern offers by being able to go faster on doors, being able to go faster on these large baseboards, being able to get it spanning the distance across, that header, and being able to just get a good finish across the door jamb itself. So there's my setup. Tritech tip. It's got a Titan guard with a Tritech gun. I like a 2-finger gun. I can't stand 4-finger guns. A 2-finger gun, you have 2 fingers controlling the gun, 2 fingers on the trigger. If you have a 4-finger gun, you don't have anything controlling the gun. A lot of times guys will swap it down here to be able to pull a 4-finger gun, but then now you're controlling it way down here. It's just really weird. I don't even understand why they make 4-finger guns. This is hooked up to my Tritech T5, so it's got a Tritech gun on it. Pressure is gonna be 2200 PSI. Anytime I'm spraying trim, somewhere around that 2100, 2200 PSI, getting down to 2000, that's probably a little bit low. So make sure your PSI is right according to the tip that you got on here. So I'm spraying a product from Sherwin-Williams called a Scuff Tough, matched up with this 510 tip and that pressure. It's been spraying out super nice. So I'm gonna talk about the door jamb itself. I'm right-handed, so it's more natural for me to spray a door jamb from right to left. If you're left-handed, it might be more natural for you to spray from left to right. Now, how I actually spray a door jamb, I came up with this method from years and years of practice of getting runs in certain places on door jambs and window trim, etc. And I'll explain to you why I do what I do. When I spray, I'm going to start off of my surface. You never want to start spraying on your surface, whether you have an extension or not, because you're more likely to get a spit onto this nice smooth surface. I always start off the surface and end off the surface. So wherever I'm going to end, I'll come off and release my trigger. So I don't start pulling the trigger on, I don't release the trigger on. So I'm gonna start off and I'm gonna come into a sweeping arc. I don't wanna have starts and stops. That's the whole goal of when you're trying to tackle something like this, is not having a start and stop or overlaps. So early on in my career, what I would do is I would spray the face. I'd come straight up, spray that face, and then I'd come across and spray it coming across. So now I just came up, I created a line coming up with one coat, then I come across and shoot it again. So this has got one coat, this has got two coats, it aligns, there's gonna be a line right here, that's a run spot. And I would get runs there all the time. And so it's the same thing. If you just, if you come up here and come back down, got an end point, a start and stop point, a heavy point, you're more likely to run. So you wanna have this thing somehow sprayed continuously, with no overlaps. Now, sometimes you gotta break the rules, but this is where the 5-10 tip, comes into play. I mean, you're gonna come up here and you want it, because I'm doing a continuous movement. I'm not coming up and coming across. So I want this continuous movement like this to eliminate overlaps. And I'm gonna come up, and I don't wanna come up and stall and turn the corner, because if you stall, this is going to be a heavy spot right here. So it's gonna be this natural sweeping movement coming up and then back down. My whole goal in this thing is to spray this whole side in multiple passes without stopping and releasing the trigger. So I'm gonna, I gotta spray my edges first, because you gotta get your edges. So I always spray my edges first. I don't count that as my continuous pass. I'm gonna come up my edge, I'm gonna come up my edge. A lot of people do not paint the tops. You should get up, ladder, spray the top. Then I'm gonna begin my continuous pattern spraying. I'm gonna come up, I'm gonna spray the face, and then come back down, and then I'm gonna come right back up, because now I've got this point right here. I need to hit these sides at an angle, so I'm gonna come right back up and come back down, shooting it at this angle directly at that. And I find that that works way better to be able to hit these two sides versus spraying it straight and straight. So I want to go straight, angle, and then my last pass is going to be straight again, because I want to hit it straight on. So I'm going to come up, I'm hitting the face, now I'm coming at an angle, hitting an angle, and then I'm going to rotate and come back, and I'm going to hit the face. So face, angle, face. And then that's going to be the outside of the door jamb. I'll swap right to this side, and you can do either side first. I mean, I can do this side first, or I can do this side first. It's gonna be the same thing. I'm gonna come to this side, hit my edge, hit my edge, hit my tap, and then do my 3 passes on the door here. So I'm gonna shoot it right now. Now, I always wear a mask. I'm not gonna wear a mask because I'm gonna be talking while I'm shooting this door jamb right here. I'm gonna shoot the opposite side first, and then I'll come back out here, shoot the other side, and you'll see what it looks like me with my back to the camera. I'm gonna talk a little bit about heat. I cranked up the heat. Heat's at 70 degrees. I wanna make sure, return air, I wanna make sure heat's off. I almost forgot, heat's off. Now I'm ready to go. So I'm gonna hit a side. Nice steady pace. Try to hit this side, pretty tight up against the wall. I'm gonna come across the top. Want to shoot it down about a 45-degree angle. Now, I'm gonna work on the door jamb. I'm gonna start off the surface, come up, turn that corner, come back down, flat. Now I'm gonna hit it at an angle. I'm watching it hit. Now I'm flat. Watching it hit my surface, gel out nicely. Just like that. Now I'm gonna swap sides. Side. Nice steady pace. When you hit your sides and top, it helps get that corner. Side. Top. About a 45-degree angle. Now face. Angle. space. Stop off the surface. Now that door jamb is done. That's the first coat. Let it dry. We'll inspect it one more time. I already saw a few things that the guy sanding missed doing final sand. There was something that might not get filled in. It actually did get filled in with the paint. It's looking pretty good. So that is how I actually spray a door jamb. And I do the exact same thing every single time. Once you get a system and a process that you can replicate like that with no runs, you'll just spray every one. You'll just start repeating it over and over. Early on in my career, I would just walk up to the door jamb and just randomly start spraying somehow. And I would get runs in different places every time because I didn't have the same system and the same process every single time that was replicatable. So now I have something that I can replicate every single time. I mean, this is the trim package you see in literally 95% of the houses that I paint. And so I can't even remember the last time I've gotten to run on a door jamb. Now I'm gonna do another video. You can stay tuned and watch another video. I'm gonna show you how I do baseboards to replicate getting perfect baseboards, like getting a perfect door jamb. And I'm also gonna do a video how I would spray a windowsill to get that perfect flat smooth finish doing a windowsill. Stay tuned. All right, today in this video, I'm gonna be talking about how I spray baseboards and get a perfect finish. I got another video, how I spray a perfect door jamb every single time without getting runs. You can go check that video out. Now I got baseboards. I'm gonna talk about my setup. My setup is 2-finger gun. I'm a big fan, only fan, 2-finger gun. Don't ever use a 4-finger gun because you don't have fingers controlling the gun. I spray with a fan pivot on my gun, which is, it rotates your gun 90 degrees, just like this. It's a magnetic device. I always use a 6-inch extension so I don't have to bend over so far. The least bending, the least fatigue you're gonna have. Your back's gonna last you a lot longer in the long run when it comes to just spraying in general. When doing trim in general, baseboards, door jambs, window trim, always a 6-inch extension. That's pretty typical. 5-10 tip. These baseboards are pretty tall. I think they're 6-inch baseboards, and a 3-10 tip will not span that gap typically in one pass. You'll see how I actually do the baseboards, and I'm just a big fan of a 5-10 tip. If the baseboards were 4-inch trim or smaller, I'd use a 310. I use a 510 doing new construction because the doors are in a 510. This trim package right here has to be in a 510 because the header, and then same with the baseboards. I don't like changing tips because then you throw it in your pocket. The time changing a tip is just, to me, obnoxious. I just pick a tip, stick with that tip. On this job, due to the size of the trim, we're using a 510. A Tri-Tech 510 is right now, at the making of this video, that's the best 510 tip that you can actually buy and use. There's no comparison in my humble opinion. Here's the baseboards. Now, one of the things that you want to do is everything's got to be vacuumed extremely well, and especially under the baseboards. And I'm gonna start spraying around. If there's any dust or debris, it's gonna work itself around this room. And I'm gonna watch as I see. If I get down here to this point where I have a wet spot and I'm working dust that direction, I'm gonna have to probably cover it with cardboard shields or vacuum it. But hopefully the vacuum guy did a good job. And we'll see as I'm spraying, because you've got 2200 PSI. I always spray the trim, door jambs, baseboards, windowsills, trim. It's at 2200 PSI is what it's set at. I always run a gauge at my sprayer so I know what it's set at the sprayer, 2200 PSI. These large baseboards, you can't shoot them in one shot. Now I always shoot at a 45-degree angle, so I hit the top of the baseboard, then I hit the face, and I hit the face at 2 passes on the first coat. And you'll see what it looks like, the 2 passes. And you can do logical starts and stops. This is really short, it's simple. So logical start and stop is just here. But this room, logical start stop, is from here to all the way over there. On the baseboards, I'm not as particular about logical start and stops because I'm shooting 3 times. So if I did the top, I'd do all the way around, work my way around the top, and then by the time I come over here, it could start flash drying and cause it to be rough. And so I work in sections and do my 3 passes and move around the room. Where you have overlaps, you're more likely to have runs. And so if you're uncomfortable with your spray technique and you're getting runs, then working all the way around the room and not having overlaps is pretty ideal. Now, when I do a door jamb, it's very replicatable. I do it exactly the same every time. I do baseboards exactly the same every time using 2 different techniques, and that's logical start and stops or just working around the room. I found that even with a 5-10 tip, 1 pass wasn't hitting it well enough, so I was doing 2 passes and then moving forward. So let's take a look and see what it looks like here. So it's gonna look like this. I'm gonna shoot the top and then I'm gonna shoot the face and come back. So that was 2 passes right there. So this is what it looks like. Top, face, bottom. Just like that. So it's top, face, bottom. Top, face, bottom. So that will actually create a spit every start and stop. So I'll show you what it looks like. If you're really concerned about a spit or you want to do logical start and stops, it's going to look like this. Here we go. Top. Face. Bottom. So if you saw that, like, one of the reasons I'm not a big fan of that is you're working the dust back and forth instead of continuously just working, possible unvacuumed dust around the room. So I sprayed dust this way and I sprayed it back that way. So that's 2 different methods how I go about spraying baseboards and getting a perfect finish. We're gonna do the door jamb and roll right around into these baseboards. So top. Now I can't hit the sides here on this door jamb because they're too tight. So just the face, side angle, face. Now I'm going to do the opposite side. So manage your hose really well. Getting close to hitting the door there. So I'm gonna hit the top. This side's too tight. So I'm gonna hit side. I'm gonna hit face. Angle. Should have moved my ladder. Straight on. I'll continue with the baseboard. I'm gonna shoot away from my door jamb so I don't kick dust on my door jamb. Just like that. Also gonna do a video how I would spray a windowsill to get that perfect flat smooth finish doing a windowsill. Right, in this video, I'm gonna show you how I go about spraying windowsills to get a perfect finish. That glassy, smooth top. I'm gonna kind of talk about them. They've got skirting underneath them. So part of my spray technique, I've got to hit the ends. I've got to hit the bottom. Some people don't, spray the bottoms, but if somebody was laying on the floor and saw that and it was bare wood, you want to have that painted. I want to have the bottom painted here. And then of course I want, the sill itself painted. And when somebody runs their hand over it, we want that to be super glassy smooth. One of the cool things about the sills is they are horizontal flat, and I can just load tons of paint on there and not worry about it running, because I want this thing to have a lot of paint on it, and I want it to feel like glass. And so my technique's gonna include, starting by spraying the sides, then I'm gonna do the bottom and shoot at a 45-degree angle to hit the face and the underneath right here. And then I'm going to shoot my sill itself. Now, like a door jamb, like a baseboards, things need to be replicatable every single time so you don't get runs. If you have overlapping spots, if I come back and come back here, overlapping spot's gonna be right here, you could get a run. If I come here and come across here, you could end up having overlapping spots someplace in this corner and getting runs on here. And so I developed a technique doing windowsills that was replicatable without runs, and you'll see exactly how I do it here. Now, if you need a mask, because I'm gonna be shooting at an angle, this is gonna come up, it'll hit this. If you're concerned about it, you'll hit in your glass, you wanna put another row of paper on there. Here's my setup, a Tri-Tech gun, 2-finger gun. Big fan of 2-finger guns, 2-finger guns only. This green device, you might ask what it is. It's a fan pivot, rotates 90 degrees. If you need to rotate your tip for some reason. Handy device, I always spray trim with a 6-inch extension. For multiple reasons. I'm using, it gives me more reach. I don't have to bend down, I don't have to reach as high. I'm not tall enough to shoot a door jamb, the top face, without having an extension. I use a Tri-Tech tip, a 510 tip. Best fine finish tips right now at the making of this video on the market. I'm using a 510 and not anything smaller because I want to span this large gap of this windowsill in a single pass. I'm going to do multiple passes, but I want it to span that entire gap. Hose whip, use a hose whip so you can, manipulate your gun around, easily and not be fighting the gun. So I'm gonna just do each windowsill one at a time and working my way across. I'm right-handed, so typically most things I do, I work from right to left. If you're left-handed, working from left to right is also fine too. Now, when it comes to doing the windowsills and doing this flat part, what I teach is you never start on and off, the start on or end on the surface. So if I start on, I'm gonna probably get a spit right on that windowsill. It might gel out and level out, but it might not. Same with the faces. I don't wanna start and stop on the face. I've got a face right here, so I gotta be careful and just kind of in the middle right there, work with that. But the windowsill, I would come off the windowsill and work it, my passes just like that. So this is what it looks like. Wear a mask. I'm not wearing a mask because I'm gonna be talking, while I'm showing you how I go about doing this. Looks like this, the end. I'm gonna hit the end, hit the end. I'm gonna hit bottom, bottom, come across, just like that. Now my sill's ready to be done. I'm gonna come across the sill, pass, 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 just like that. Now, one thing you wanna do, and I got talking a little bit, I didn't check to make sure I was dusted. I always wipe my windowsills with my hands, make sure there's nothing on there. I didn't do that on the first one, so I might pay the price. But it looks like it's pretty good. So I'm gonna hit end, end, bottom, bottom, face. Now I'm gonna come across, front, back, the whole thing. So I'm trying to hit the front. I'm trying to hit like kind of the front of it here, the back, and then the whole thing. So here it is again, side, side. And when I'm releasing the trigger, I'm releasing it up here, so it's spitting there. So bottom, bottom, face, come across. Just like that. So I did the same thing every time. And so I hit the bottom, came across the face. And then when I hit this again, I'm kind of angling the gun. It's not 100% flat the first time. It's kind of hitting this front flat part first. And then I'm coming across the whole thing and then trying to hit more towards the back so I don't get it, light in the back. So sometimes the 5-inch tip, it's feathering out, but I'm kind of like moving, back and forth on those 3 passes. A little bit sighted towards spraying the front, a little bit sighted to the middle, a little bit sighted to the back. There it is, a windowsill. Got one more over here that doesn't have a skirt. We'll show you underneath it. So here's another windowsill, a little bit different. Doesn't have a skirt on the bottom. This is kitchen countertops. There's probably backsplash. This one, I want, probably is gonna be getting water, on here quite a bit. And one of the things, this might be a good option to put like an epoxy on something like that if the builder was paying for that, or maybe something you might suggest. But I don't necessarily have to do, well, I'm not sure because I don't know what's going underneath here and how far it's going to come up here, but we probably want to paint the bottom of this. And so I'm going to do the ends, the bottom, and the top. So the end, I'm going to shoot bottom. I'm going to do 2 passes on the bottom. Come across the front part of the sill, middle part of the sill, back of the sill, end off, just like that. This is first coat. Everything gets sanded again. So I've done a video on doing windowsills, door jambs, baseboards. First coat, we go back with 1/2-inch ultrafine Ecosilk sponges on our Ecosand 3x4 sander. Hit it really quick to knock anything down that might be on there, dust or anything rough. And then we'll shoot our second coat and it'll be done and look like glass. All right, today I'm gonna be talking about tip spraying interior ceilings. Now, ceilings can be one of the most challenging things you can ever paint, let alone spray. So I'm gonna give you some tips so you could end up getting professional results. Your ceilings will have a nice sheen all the way across it. You're not gonna have lap marks, you're not gonna have flashing on it, hopefully with these tips. So first thing I'm gonna talk about is spraying the ceilings with an airless sprayer and what tip I would use. The tips I would use are Titan HEA tips. If you have to spray ceilings, those tips are gonna be the tip that will give you the most success. And why is that? Titan HEA tips have a nice feathered edge to them. They're high efficiency airless tips and they run at low pressures. And just the way they were designed, they don't have like kind of a sharp edge to them, which you can get, fingering, tailing a lot of issues with just typical production tips. HEA tips, the only place I like really using them is spraying interior walls, and I love them for spraying interior ceilings. The next thing is having a tip big enough to get enough product on there that it doesn't dry too fast, because ceilings are inherently really warm, hotter than it is down here. And so you're gonna run into problems with your paint drying too fast and not getting like a good gel coat on it and a good even finish, allowing it to dry without having lap marks and what we call like feathering and even holidays, etc., stuff like that. So Titan HA tips, if I had one tip to shoot ceilings with, I'd probably choose a 619. If you're uncomfortable using a tip that large, I'd probably drop down to a 517. So a 619, 517. If you're comfortable shooting bigger, you could jump into like a 1221 that's gonna shoot you a huge pattern and you can shoot your ceiling super fast. But that's probably gonna be for new construction. Even new construction, I'd be using probably a 619, a repaint, I'd be doing a 619 also. So now I got the tip, I've got an airless sprayer. You're typically gonna run, if you're running the tip I recommend, you're gonna be running your pressure somewhere between 800 and 1100 PSI. When I spray a ceiling, I typically don't release the triggers, so I want it running at that pressure while I'm pulling the trigger. If you're releasing your trigger, the pump has a tendency to build that pressure, etc. And so you want it while you're pulling the trigger to be around that 800 to 1100 PSI. I would prefer somewhere if you can just get it nailed down to 1000 PSI, that would probably be what you would want. Once I get ready to spray the ceilings, I'm always spraying with some form of extension, so I don't have to like reach really high to spray the extension, and it's not like a lot of work on my shoulder. I want an extension that's gonna give me the ability to hold my arm in a locked position like this and spray the ceiling. So I got an extension on my gun. This ceiling right here, I'd probably want a little bit longer extension than I got. I got longer extensions. This one's getting right about where I want it. So you can see the difference in these two extensions. For this ceiling, I'd probably be using that extension. So now I got my gun, I got my extension. I'll give you some tips spraying. Now, if you have the ability to spray from what we call logical start and stop points, that's from one end of the room to the other end of the room, you're gonna have success spraying ceilings. If you have to stop someplace, in the middle of the room because of a bed, because of furniture, because of a sprayer, a pallet of tile in the middle, whatever it may be, you can have a start and stop in the middle of the room room, that's gonna be a spot where you're gonna be overlap, and it's gonna have, you know, a different amount of paint than the rest of your 50% overlaps around the room, and that's gonna make it difficult to have success painting ceilings. Sometimes there's nothing you can do about it, and if you have like those overlaps in the middle of the room where you can't walk the entire distance, you're gonna come down and you're gonna, instead of just a hard stop and go back, you're gonna feather it out. My gun's gonna come down, I'm gonna send my spray pattern down, and then I'm gonna come back up, and it allows it to feather it out. When I come back the other side, I'm gonna do the opposite side, so it's feathering it out, not leaving a hard start and stop right in the middle of the ceiling. So wherever that may happen, you'll want to keep that in mind. So now in new construction, I always have the ability to walk, you know, from your logical start and stops, and it's changing on this ceiling, you know, all over the place, but I still can just walk, and I'm gonna start one corner, I'm gonna start just working my way this direction. I'm gonna start my first pass. My first pass is gonna be a double pass, because as I overlap 50%, everything's getting 2 coats of paint. Your first pass, your first lap won't get 2 coats. 2 passes, and then begin overlapping 50%. Your 50% overlap is extremely important, because what that's doing, you're overlapping. So if my spray pattern's, you know, this big, I'm gonna move over next and I'm gonna overlap at 50%. You're getting a nice thick coat of paint. The worst thing you can do in a ceiling is go too fast, not overlap properly, and have, you know, thick layers of paint, thin layers of paint, and it all dry unevenly, and that's what you're eventually gonna see as lap marks, you know, in your ceiling. So your 50% has to be, you know, equal across the board. Hopefully you have the right lighting where you can see that. And then your pace. So once I begin, you know, spraying, I'm gonna be just walking a specific pace, watching the paint hit the ceiling, and watching that I'm getting a good saturated coat onto the ceiling. If you're walking too fast, you'll notice it if you're watching it. You can see it, you can hear it as, you know, the paint's coming out. I can hear the sprayer, how hard the sprayer is working, but I'm paying really close attention, seeing that paint going, okay, it looks like it's getting really saturated, really good. It looks really wet. You want it to look sopping wet is what you want. I get to the end, I come across, I start backing up, and I start doing my 50% overlap. I'm watching that overlap, making sure it's overlapping the 50%. I'm making sure it's saturated. And as I'm working down my ceiling, I'm looking at what I've just done also to make sure it all looks super wet. If I see any spot that looks like I went too fast or I didn't overlap good enough while it's sopping wet, you can go hit it again. If you wait till the end and it all dries and you realize you had something that wasn't coated as well, and you go back and try to hit that again after it's already drying, you're probably gonna get a big flashing spot in the middle of your ceiling. So it's better to get too much on than not enough on. It really comes down to your pace. You wanna walk a slow pace. You wanna make sure you overlap 50%. If you keep all those things in mind, you'll have success, you know, spraying your ceilings. Paint, I'll talk a little bit about paint. The type of paint you put on the ceiling, the flatter the sheen, the more success you are gonna have, you know, spraying ceilings. The higher the sheen, the more likelihood you're gonna see your airs or light spots or holidays, etc. The higher the sheen, the more imperfections you will see. So I really like flat on ceilings just for that reason. So flat or matte works well for ceilings. If you start to get up into a satin sheen on a sheen on a ceiling, you are gonna have to just take all these things I talk about and make sure they're implemented 100%. The other thing is temperature. Turn the heat down. What you don't want is the overspray, the dust, the silica dust, etc., going into the return air, messing up your heater. So you want your room to be cooled down and not super hot, because your hot air rises, the ceilings are hot. The slower they dry, the more likelihood you are gonna have success spraying them. So turn the heater off way before you get ready to just do a ceiling if you wanna have success. So there's some of my tips and tricks that I use when it comes to spraying ceilings to have success spraying them, and hopefully you can take something from that and improve your ceiling spraying yourself. All right, in this video, I'm gonna talk about how I go about spraying walls and having a lot of success doing them. I'm gonna give you some of my tips and tricks. So hopefully when you spray a wall, you can get professional results. It can look super nice, even without lap marks, without flashing, etc. And the first thing I'll talk about, I got an extension here. You always see me spraying with extensions. I got a gun with a tip. Now this is a fine finish tip because I just got done spraying a door. But the first thing when it comes to spraying interior walls, I highly recommend using Titan HEA tips. HEA tips have a nice feathered edge instead of like a fine finish tip or a production tip. They have kind of a sharp edge which causes fingering, tails, lines, etc., stuff like that. Harder to get a good finish on walls. Titan HEA tips is my recommendation. I like shooting walls with a 619 tip. If I want to go down a little bit lower depending on product, a 517. If I'm on new construction just blasting something fast, I'd be like a 1221 or a 23. But Titan HEA, high efficiency airless tips, that's my biggest tip that I can give you when it comes to having success spraying interior walls, because of that super nice feathered edge, and it sprays at low pressures. I typically run in it around 1,000 PSI. The next tip I'll talk about is using extensions when it comes to spraying walls. Without an extension, if I'm using just a gun, I have to bend over excessively and I have to reach excessively to do that wall. It's a lot more work for you to reach high, bend down low to do that. It works your back, it works your shoulders. It's just completely unnecessary. Typically what I do is choose an extension, like if I got high walls like this, an extension where I can easily reach the top and I can easily reach the bottom. You can see I don't even have to bend over to do this motion to spray this wall. It just makes sense to use extensions when it comes to spraying the majority of the things you use. You're not going to be nearly as fatigued, worn out at the end of the day. You start to do the math. You start doing this for 20 years, 30 years, and you start getting tendonitis in your shoulders and getting back problems. You'll thank me if you start using an extension. I had an old man tell me that one time in the paint store when I was young, and I never used an extension until he told me that exactly what I'm saying here. I walked out of that store with multiple extensions, never looked back, and I use them just about on every single thing I do. So have an extension if you want to have success spraying walls. The next tip I'll give you when it comes to spraying walls and having success is spraying the walls and utilizing good technique and good pattern overlay. I'm gonna start someplace. I don't wanna start ever in the middle of a wall. I'm gonna start from a logical start and stop. Over here, the corner's a logical start and stop. I'll start working around the room this direction. I'm gonna start in the corner. I'm gonna begin overlapping 50% as I go. Doing ceilings and walls, a 50% overlap is extremely important. As you're spraying, what's really, really important is you are actually seeing the paint hit the wall. So you have to be 100% focused. You have to see the paint. You have to hear the paint coming out of your gun. Is your tip blown out? Is it hissing? Is it spitting? You got to understand what's going on. You got to be very focused. I'm overlapping 50%. I see that I overlap 50%. It looks super wet. It's not too much. It's not too little. If it looks a little bit dry, I probably need to slow down my speed a little bit. If it looks a little bit wet, like, wow, I might get a run, I'll speed up a little bit. So I make those adjustments, and you'll eventually you'll just know right off, it'll be just second nature. As soon as you start, you'll know exactly. If you don't have any experience at all, it takes a little bit of time, but you'll figure it out. 50% overlap, I'm seeing it as I'm working down the wall. I'm looking down the wall out of my peripheral vision. Do I look like I have a nice wet coat all the way down the wall? Or if my overlap was too much, do I have some light dry spots in the walls? That's going to cause you issues. Keep your 50% overlap consistent. Keep your speeds consistent, and you'll have some success. So the last tip I'll talk about is, is heat. And too much heat, your paint drying too fast, as you're working down the wall, can actually cause you problems. Heat is good when it comes to spraying trim. I want the heat up pretty hot when I'm spraying trim, because I want it to flash dry really fast. Trim paint is more likely to run than wall paint. Majority of wall paints hang extremely well. And so I like the heat to be down, more in that 65 range. When I'm spraying trim, more in the 75 range. So 65 range, it allows it to just smooth out, level out, and gel out nicely over a period of time instead of drying too fast. If you are walking too fast or your overlap's not right, if the temperature is lower, it's going to help you have some success. So, make sure the temperature is right. Too cold with interior paint, you start to get below 65 degrees, and then you could cause running issues with your paint. You don't want interior paint to be in the 50-degree range because it doesn't like that range. So somewhere between 65 and 70 is actually really good for interior paint. And then the last thing I'll say is you're only as good as the paint you apply. If you apply cheap paint, you're gonna get cheap results or bad results. It's really hard to have success spraying or rolling any paint that's cheap. I only use high-end paints or lifetime warranty paints when I'm working inside or outside. Right now on this job, new construction job, I'm using a product from Sherwin-Williams called Scuff Tough. It's spraying out amazing. It looks amazing. It's easy to have success when you're using a good product. It's a user-friendly product, something if you've never sprayed before, hangs really well, covers really well. It's on the trim and walls. I've had a lot of success with it so far. I just started using it and I actually so far like it. I have no idea how long it's gonna last scrubbability and its scuff resistance because I don't have any experience with it yet. But from an application standpoint, spraying, I've had a lot of success with it in here in varying conditions. So once again, you're only as good as the paint you apply.